Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for October 6, 2020, 10 a.m. session. No public testimony will be taken during this review session. Please do not call in. The first item is SOC calendar, new cases. Item number 21, 11407BZ, 7-05, 152nd Street, Queens.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval with 3 opposed. I just want to alert commissioners that there was a revised submission of plans and a tech memo on Friday, October 1st, and we actually just received something from the fire department that I'll talk about in a second. Our council also should note that there is a proposal here to correct the as-built third floor area to 3,763 square feet. Applicant needs to clarify what the building total floor area is. Is it 15,624.5 square feet, but approved at 15,087 square feet? So therefore not in compliance with the grant, i.e. overbuilt. We're waiting unless we have them. I haven't seen comments from DOT, and fire department just sent in a letter of objection. It says, as per section 504.4.1 of the fire code on rooftop access, no access has been provided to the roof of the proposed playground area. Therefore, the fire department objects to this application. The applicant is advised to file with Technology Management Unit in the Bureau of Fire Prevention in order to review and approve rooftop access. So we respectfully request that the board direct the applicant to file and obtain approval for rooftop access for firefighting and rescue operations. Continuing with my notes, I didn't find in the application a discussion of compliance with the terms of the grant other than the lay-by lane. I'd like to know, and I think this is just that our seeker officer, Tracy Benke, will bring this up also, but has DEP seen the noise report of February 11th, 2020 that was submitted on May 12th, 2020? I'm not understanding the noise study. Why is it projecting impact of the existing at-grade playground on receptor 1 in the no-build scenario, as opposed to just conducting field measurements when the playground is active? Measurements were taken pre-COVID, and instead they modeled the rooftop, and now I'm not sure what to do. Furthermore, DEP in its review asked whether the areas at the yard and second floor had been anticipated and studied as play areas, as the approved drawings and resolution don't indicate that use. I think, and I confirm that there's no mention of play area in the prior application. So I would say it's best to take actual measurements of play areas in operation. But I'm not sure how one does that today under these circumstances. Otherwise, all areas would need to be modeled, and DEP should advise that based on the assumption that all play areas are new. So I hope, Tracy, that clarifies the question.
Yes, that clarifies. They were seeking our point of view of what should be measured, basically. So if you're saying all of it, yes. Yeah. I mean, it is normal to model areas that don't exist yet. But.
Right. Yes, but the thing is, if those play areas, they were new as compared to our approval, but apparently they were in January active play areas. And but of course it was January, so probably not being used by the kids anyhow, right? So, you know, then you have that problem also. There is a disagreement between the statement of facts and the noise study on the area of the play area at the third floor. So things need to be coordinated. They need to show on the site plans a notation of the lay-by lane and location of no parking sign. I mean, you can look at it and you can see what it is, but it's not labeled and it's not dimensioned. I'd like to know, how does curbside drop-off pickup occur, which they say they include also, if the lay-by lane consumes almost the entire frontage of the building? Doesn't that require children to pass between cars moving in and out of the lay-by lane? That seems strange. That sounds like double parking. Since the site has been operating for many years, I asked, shouldn't the traffic pedestrian studies in the tech memo reflect field conditions so that we can see the delta between current and projected proposed? The statement of fact states that the proposal is to reduce parking spots from 18 to 15, but the existing plan shows only 15 spots as it is. Have the conversions requested already been carried out, and this is a legalization? If it's a legalization, we should be told that. And then what is proposed to protect the children from the noise and fumes of the HVAC systems on the third floor terrace? And then I think, and we have open DOT, as we say, and open air and noise and air quality review. Okay.
Yeah, at
Any-
this point, the DOT only have minor edits, but they were also wondering about the square footage. So they need clarification on the square footage issue.
Okay. All right. Thank you. All right. Vice Chair Shanda.
Okay. My question is related to a couple of things. One is that the side yard on the ground floor and second floor roof that is being used as a play area, again, goes back to was not clear to me from the plan or for the BSA resolution, was that approved as part of the prior grant? And will there be an increase in the use of the space? So if, let's say, now with the number of students increasing, will there be a greater utilization of that space and will therefore require a new analysis? And I think from the discussion, what Madam Chair, you just said, that we should just analyze all three sites, so which then will address my comment. With regards to the location of the trash storage, it needs to be indicated in the plan. And also they need to indicate if that will be adequate with the increased capacity of students in the school. Other than that, I really did not have any concern with the plan and with the expansion proposal, given the location of the site. It's in a dead-end street with very light manufacturing uses around it. And the street is very wide. So I did not have any concerns with much of the traffic movement. The only question I had was the applicant is proposing that there will be a new school on the third floor. And my question was, will the new school have a different drop-off and pickup? And will it be operating differently from the current school? It wasn't quite clear to me from the statement. And how will if it has different drop-off and pickup, how will that be coordinated with the existing daycare and also would minimize further curbside interruptions and intrusion into the residential area?
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Otley Brown.
I remember when this application first came around, and I remember the area very well. And it's to me, if you're going to have a school in this type of a district in an M1, you couldn't have picked a better place, because it's like kind of at the end of the road, almost by the waterfront in Whitestone. So I didn't really have any issues with this application, because it's just, to me, adding another 40 children. I don't think that's going to make a big impact on either the school's operations as they currently are, or even on the surrounding neighborhood. I did have just some questions in the application. I think that there are a couple of situations where numbers have been transcribed throughout the statement of facts and findings. And I'm talking about page 1 of the statement, where they're saying in one part 15,625 square feet, and then a few paragraphs down it's saying 15,569 square feet. Then when they talk about the 3rd floor and what was built versus what was granted, in one paragraph on page 4 is 3,763 square feet, and in the other paragraph it's 3,673 square feet. Just a few things that quality control would take care of. And then my other question had to do with leaving that one office as a use group 6 office of 332 square feet on the 3rd floor. And my question is, why wouldn't that just all be use group 3? Because it is administrative offices for the school. Why not just make the entire building UG3? That was my question.
That's
And that's it.
okay. Thank you very much. Commissioner Shetta.
Thank you, Chair. My only remaining comment is regarding noise. It's in addition to the comments that you, Chair, mentioned. In the statement of facts, it says a noise study was conducted and is attached Appendix B, and it continues to say, with the specified attenuation measures outlined in the attached noise study, blah, blah, blah. So I did look at the noise study and I couldn't see any attenuation measures specified there. My understanding is their conclusion is like, we need nothing, unless if they consider the chain link fence at the rooftop play area is an acoustical measure, and I don't think it is. So are we specifying any measures or no? That need to be clarified. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And Commissioner Shibata.
Thank you, Chair. While I know it's a smaller enlargement and the request for only 40 extra students, I'd be happy to see a sentence or two or explanation as to why they believe this growth is happening, what changed or something along those lines. And I say that more so for bigger cases, that when they ask for enlargements and they have more students, I think that it should be part of our practice to ask for a little detail as to growth potential and why, and will you need one in a couple of years, et cetera.
Mm-hmm. Good point. Thank you all. Okay.
Next item is item number 22, 30313BZ, 506 510 Brooks Avenue, the Bronx. 506
Brook Avenue.
Brook Avenue.
Okay, yeah, we have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community board recommends approval. Like to know what the status but I believe did we get a copy of the approval? I have a note that they voted on 9/25/20. I don't know if we actually got their
Oh,
resolution.
I thought I uploaded it, but let me check. I'll send it to you.
Thanks. I may have just written, I don't know why I have both the date and the fact of approval, so maybe. Thanks, Jill. I'd like to know what the status of negotiations with the Environmental Control Board on penalties is, and what is the status of the discussion on financing with HPD. In these times, are projects actually being funded now? I just don't really understand. There's a lot of statements in here that assumes financing, and I have no idea whether any of these programs exist, can be relied on for financing. So, and it's not the applicant's fault, of course, but to clarify, to make those statements true statements as opposed to simple conjecture that those programs will still exist or will still fund or anything like that. Also, I note that the term sheets provided for are fairly old. Like one of them is from like 2012. I'm wondering whether there's been updates. Maybe there haven't been updates, but And I'm a bit confused actually by the stated premise for the change in unit count. The statement of fact states that the previous project was based on the assumption of 100% of the units at 60% of AMI, and that HPD's current preferences are a mix of 30% to 80% of AMI with a specific breakdown of percentages between that. But actually, if you read the resolution of our grant, it states that the project was proposed to serve an income range of 40% to 80% AMI. So I don't understand how that's different from what is being proposed here. So the applicant needs to get into more detail about that. Was it a different program that has a different mix? And so, you know, what's the difference between the actual approved one and the assumptions made for the approved one and this one? Because this, on the prior approval, it wasn't represented to the board as far as the resolution is stating that it was going to be all 60%. So, yeah. Also, in terms of the drawings, they need to call out all the materials on all the facades. And I just want to make a note because we don't often see well-designed buildings. I think this would be a great project if it was actually built like the renderings show, and not value engineered to the point of losing all of its character. So those are my comments. Vice Chair Shanda?
Okay, thank you. So I'm glad to see this project taking off. It was in the pipeline for a long time in the HPD, but for various reasons it didn't take off. So I'm glad to see it's taking off. And as you mentioned, Madam Chair, the program is now going to be funded under ELA. The ELA program came into place, I would say, about few years ago. Before that, the programs where that program did not exist. So there was a modification made between the prior grant, and I cannot recall the prior grants case, but definitely ELA is a much recent program. So there is a difference in the programming. The ELA program asks for deeper affordability and for and housing for formerly homeless. And other important part is that the HPD design guideline has changed significantly from what was then approved, because of which the housing, the unit sizes are reduced, which therefore allows for more units. Now, I definitely cannot get into the nuances of the term sheets. That was never my forte when I was at HPD. So I would let the applicant clarify that. But as I understand it, the program did not exist. And while I was there already at that time, there was a push being made as a citywide policy to provide a more affordable unit, deeper affordable unit, and housing for homeless. So this project definitely seems to be fulfilling those new policy guidelines and whatever is the current new policy guideline. So I'm satisfied with him. So with this project, Sobro has a very good track record in providing new affordable housing and also preserving affordable housing. They have been a champion for South Bronx development. So I really have nothing more to say other than just for our record, we should have a letter from HPD about the support, letter of support for our file. It's basically the standard commitment letter that we have gotten, which they write a soft commitment letter. It is what HPD calls a soft commitment letter. And I think that's what I'm asking for, is for our file, we just have a soft commitment letter, if that's possible, especially under the current financial crisis that city is facing and lack of funding, if that's possible. If not, I won't push for it.
Mm-hmm. We haven't done very well with those soft.
I think. Yeah.
No. I know in the field, in the trenches, we haven't done very well with getting those. Jella, Ms. Prenga, did you want to add something to that?
Hi. So they have issued some soft commitment letters in the past, but I believe right now they're not because of the budget. But this is an older project, so perhaps, you know, this has been in the pipeline, so perhaps they would for this. I'm not sure. I also wanted to let you know about the commune board recommendation.
Yeah, thank you.
So, yeah, the chairperson of the community board sent us an email. The chairperson is Betty Bryant Brown. And she told us that please be advised that Bronx Community Board 1 has received its contents. That was the application contents. On September 9th, 2020, Sobro, the applicant, and its development team made a presentation at our Economic Development, Housing, and Land Use Committee. The committee voted to approve the project. On September 24th, 2020, the full board received the committee recommendation and voted to approve the project in its full scope. The board looks forward to the completion of this project.
Thank you very much. That's in the R folder, right?
Yes, under testimony.
Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Anything else, Vice Chair Chanda, that you wanted to add?
No,
No.
No.
Commissioner Motley Brown?
Well, I felt that this was a very thorough application. It clearly laid out what the issues were, that due to having to bring in more lower level affordability of apartments, that brings in less income. The only way to make up the income is to increase the number of units and to take advantage of the HPD new policy regarding unit sizes to decrease the size of the units so you could provide more within the same envelope. I thought it was reasonable. I have no questions.
Okay. Great. Commissioner Sheta?
Thank you, Chair. Nothing further from me.
Commissioner Shibeta?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to get a little bit more information on the penalties, and and as it was stated earlier, is there going to be some sort of soft commitment as to funding and financing?
You mean the ECB penalties?
ECB penalties, and
Right.
nothing further from me. But I understand they're all boiler room issues. I just wanted a little more information on that, on the ECB issues.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next one.
Appeals
Go ahead.
calendar to continue hearing items. Item number 23, 2019-82A, 430 St. Mark's, 430 St. Mark's Place, Staten Island.
Okay. We last heard this on May 13th and received DOT comments on July 2nd, to which applicant did not respond in time for the July 13th hearing, so we adjourned that hearing. A revised builder's pavement plan was submitted on September 16th to respond to DOT's comments, but I don't believe we have sign off from DOT.
Yes,
do.
we do. I
We
sent
do.
it yesterday.
Oh, we received it yesterday? Okay, so I just want to see, I don't see, so DOT requested dimensions between street trees and curb cuts. Yeah. But I also wanted to point out, so, okay, so what does the DOT letter say?
the DOT,
It's
it's a standard letter.
It's a standard letter that says the standard thing that says the city doesn't have title to the location, the improvements of Victory Boulevard extension, which would take a portion of the applicant's property, is not presently in the DOT's capital improvement program. And that's it, basically. They said they reviewed the documents submitted on September 17th. And they're fine with it.
okay. All right.
This came in October 5th, yesterday.
Yeah, okay, I'm looking at it. You know what? I probably read it thinking it was related to a different application. All right.
Oh, okay.
Okay, got it. So, and I just want to point out that in terms of just understanding the rules, so DOT had a problem with the distance between the curb cut and the street trees. It didn't have a problem. It said dimension it, right? And I'm just curious about this. The dimension, the DOT and also its, yeah, DOT guidelines, when you find them at their website, because it's actually not in the rules, says that the clearance between a tree and a curb cut is 7 feet.
feet.
But it doesn't say to where. The edge of the tree, the center line of the tree pit. It's quite confusing because trees can be, as we know, 36-inch diameter, I mean, or even bigger than that, right? So if you were measuring it to the center line of the tree, that has nothing to do with a car clearing. So it's quite a strange instruction. And the applicant reasonably measured to the center line of the tree, but is the tree skinny? What if it gets fat? All of that. Anyway, it's just an observation. Seems quite odd to me. We do have fire department sign off. And
We have DEP sign off.
wait, give me a chance.
Oh, sorry.
So we have fire department sign off, and I'm just reading. The fire department has reviewed the plan. A fire hydrant is located directly. Okay, and we do have DEP sign off, which again I don't see. Where's the DEP sign off?
It's in the folder.
Okay, and did they say something?
No, they had no, I don't have it in front of me. I'm sorry.
Okay.
They had no objection to the application as long as they submitted what they submitted. Unfortunately, I don't have it in front of me.
Okay. I'll look. Okay. All right. Vice Chair Shanda? Maybe we had it before.
I had no
We had
additional comments. I'm
We
fine
had
with it.
DP sign off before. This is like old. We had DP sign off like in February.
Right. The only thing we're waiting for was DOT, is my understanding.
Yeah. Okay.
Anybody else?
Don't confuse me. All right.
Sorry.
All right. Sorry, Commissioner. You don't have any additional comments?
No, I have no additional comments. I'm fine with this application now.
All right. Commissioner Otley Brown?
No comments.
All right. Okay. Commissioner Shetta?
I'm good with this application.
Okay. And Commissioner Shabeta?
Nothing further from me.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Move on?
Yep.
Okay, next item is item number 24, 2019-182A. This is 1 Marina Road, Queens. This is the Appendix G application.
Yes. And always, this application always takes me just hours and hours and hours and hours to review. There's so many drawings. It's such a complicated subject. So I just want commissioners to be aware, that if they aren't already, that 2 different sets of plans were submitted. The first on September 16th, which is a 102-page set that we asked be reduced to the drawings relevant to the BSA's review and responsive to our comments at the last hearing. A reduced set, in other words, not reduced in dimensions, but in number of pages, was submitted on September 23rd, and another set submitted on September 30th. So therefore, I focused my review on the September 30th submission, but my review required that I go back and forth between the September 30th set and the 9/16 full set in the hope of finding answers that didn't appear in the reduced set. So I'd have to say that the reduced set reduced far too much, because critical drawings that are related to the structures that we're being asked to look at are in the 102-page set and were not included in the reduced set. So, so the idea of a reduced set to make it easy for us actually didn't provide us with all the data. At the last hearing, we asked for more information about many things. Drawing A201 shows a set of elevations of the concession structure that is not keyed to the plans, so they need to be keyed in. There are 4 section details of the piers on MR-301. Site plan MR-201 only refers to details A, B, C. Where is detail D located? That's shown on MR-301. There is MR-201 refers to 3 details and on MR-303. There is no MR-303 provided. The MR-303 in the 916 full package indicates those details are for Pier 3, not Pier 1. None of the details on MR-304 are keyed into the site plan on MR-201. Sorry if this is, I'm hoping the architect listens to this. In other words, they need to improve the clarity of the set so we can follow along. And we asked them to do this at the last hearing, so I'm not really sure why I'm asking these kinds of questions. All the drawings that appear in the sets given to us have to be keyed in so we can follow the bouncing ball. There is a BSA hearing comments chart that was submitted on 9/16. It breaks down board comments very specifically and begs that each comment be addressed. Confusingly, item number 15 asks, but never answers, why can't toilets in the concession building be landward? That would mean perhaps still below BFE, but not within the V zone. The chart also promises that the V zone line will be shown on the drawings, but I don't see it on any newly submitted sets. I only see VE zone designation, which is a different thing. Is this site actually in a V zone? The provided firm maps don't show it being in a V zone. If it's in a VE zone, do the same prohibitions apply? And I got the V zone from the statement of facts and from other things that said we're in a V zone, and that's what I think the objection sheet also says, you can't build in a V zone. So need more specificity and precision here. There was also a promise to show the mean high water line on the drawings. I can't find it. If it's there, the line itself, it's buried behind other lines, like I think it's hidden in the rocks, in the riprap, literally. So I wanted also to know about the danger of floating projectiles that could become dislodged in the event the structures in question were destroyed and how they would be secured. I asked for a roof plan and how the mechanical equipment on the roof would be protected and secured. The cover letter provides a verbal assurance that everything will be okay, but the drawings don't support the assurances. If they do, I don't know where in the 102-page set of drawings they are, since drawing M101 entitled Mechanical Concession Structure Plans does not show any special form of secure tie down for the rooftop or interior mechanicals or otherwise. That the same holds true for, quote, the equipment required to operate the marina, in parentheses, electrical and water service, unquote, that is to be, quote, elevated above the flood elevation, unquote. How are these being secured and located above flood elevation? I don't find these drawings. And where are the, quote, waterproof enclosures or marine grade concrete encasements, unquote, for the utilities as described in the cover letter and chart? Where are the details for those enclosures and encasements? Where is the, quote, separate platform to which the equipment and utilities will be anchored as described at item 21? I have to say that because the board is charged with a very serious job here to analyze something really complicated, the applicant cannot just write to us and say, don't worry about it, we'll take care of it. You can't. We have to see it. We have to see how it's going to be done, and not that in the future, they promise it'll be done. That's not how it works. We have to determine that this is safe. Otherwise, we have to determine it's not safe and not grant the waiver. Item 23 in the chart with respect to costs, does this does the position that the concrete structure will withstand V-level wave impacts consider equipment and fixture replacement costs to government? So that's one of our findings, right? That if it's damaged, it won't be a significant cost to government to replace, right? So the discussion says, well, we're building this out of concrete. Well, anybody knows that you can see buildings that are completely wiped out along the shorelines in flood zones, even though they're concrete. So maybe the concrete structure is still standing, but there's nothing left inside. For example, have they taken into account the loss of all of the contents of the toilet rooms, i.e. all the fixtures, fittings, the fueling station, the concession, and below BFE equipment, and the loss of the metal panel cladding? They're cladding the structure in metal panels. It's all going to blow away in the storm. So the material specification abbreviated list that was provided to us with the idea of helping us understand better where the let's say the relevant materials are, actually wasn't that helpful, since the spec book that was provided to us skips divisions 7 and 8. So if you're going to point us to something, make sure that we have the something to read. And then it would have been more helpful to actually give us cut sheets or something on the elements that are thought to be relevant, because I used to work on projects with spec books. The spec books, no one reads the spec books. They, you know, get handed down over generations and no one updates them and so on. They're kind of just there. It's almost like eyewash. What's really matters is the research that's done for a particular project, and selecting new materials, that those new materials are very specifically specified, and not the spec book that says when you have a screw, make sure the pointy end goes to the wall. The problem I just do have to say with these types of applications that we're being asked to look here is actually that there is an extreme conflict between the ADA and FEMA requirements. These are in direct opposition to each other. And I wish that the two agencies, federal agencies, would get together and come to some kind of conclusion about how this should be working. Because yes, you can lift it, but then no, you're not providing ADA access to essential, or let's say public cert facilities, right? So to comply, the concession would have to be lifted an entire story off the pier elevation to comply with the ADA. I mean, to comply with FEMA. But to minimize the potential impacts of storms, I still ask, and still haven't gotten an answer, why some of the facilities provided in this concession cannot be located on the second story of the structure or adequately elevated above BFE to minimize damage in the event of a flood event. For example, there are, I forget how many toilets, 6 or something. Why can't all but one toilet room with one full set of fixtures for the disabled be lifted above BFE? And the same for the equipment room and the concession elements. There's many things in a concession that don't need to be within arm's reach of the concessionaire. They can be located up above on a mezzanine, at arm's reach, against standing on a step stool, something like that. Not all of this stuff needs to be below the flood, significantly below the flood. It's like 5 to 7 feet below the flood. And then I also looked up and I saw examples of 2-story structures on other piers, really attractive ones. So I'm not sure why that's not being proposed here. The drawings need to illustrate the statement in the response chart that the gates will only be closed after hours, and to show clearly the gate locations that prevent general public access to the boat slips. I only saw one, the main entry gate that brings you down, but I didn't, down across the main pier, but I didn't see gates to the boat slips. They need to provide clear notes at clear indications of the gates on the drawings. The response to issue 24 about prevention of spillage from the fuel dock I found unsatisfactory. A plan for prevention was described earlier as DEC approved. If it hasn't yet been approved, what is the plan and what is the estimated review turnaround? I'd like them to explain the response to item 57 on their chart. My comment at hearing was that this pier appears to be the only one in Parks portfolio that has special flood preparation procedures. And so I'd like to understand, what have the other piers done as to their on-pier concession buildings that does not require these special procedures, and why can't that be done here? On the construction start, why is a BSA approval needed by 12/20/20, which in other words is now? If the project start isn't until next year, or actually what is meant by winter 2021? Is that the early part of 21 or the end of 2021? And I'd also like to know whether capital funding is still available for this work at all. I think I asked that question last time. On the environmental justice question, which we spent some time on and we had public testimony about, my specific questions were not answered. We had testimony that the promenade is in poor shape and that there are no toilet facilities for such users. What is the response to that? I had asked the applicant to reach out to Parks Commissioner Silver to find out what the total budget allocation is for the combination of Piers 1, 3, and Promenade. And this wasn't apparently done because we have nothing in the submission. It is not mayoral policy to be ignoring need in underserved areas. So I'm still very interested in their response to environmental justice issues. Okay, those are my comments. Vice Chair Shanda.
Okay, so it was quite a bit of document to review, but I appreciate the detail, the follow-up information the applicant has provided. It was extremely informative and responsive to all the comments that were raised at the last hearing. It definitely clarifies my comments and my concerns. I didn't have much to start with, but it addressed all my comments. I am satisfied with the application, and I think this application, this follow-up submission further clarified the complexity of this project and how the applicant, especially the City Parks Department, is trying to address the combination of viability of operating the concession stand, abiding by New York State DEC's requirement of limiting the amount of the overwater coverage and in-water fill and other requirements of constructing in a flood zone. And the applicant has submitted what the City Parks Department has proposed and has bidded. And so I do not have any other questions. I'm satisfied with this application.
Commissioner Ali Brown?
I found that they answered my question. They provided the itemized cost to comply with Appendix G by elevating the structure, and they showed that a large portion of the cost would be in the ramps that would be required to make the pier and concession accessible. I am supporting this project as is. I don't have any other questions.
Okay, Commissioner Sheta. And I see, by the way, Jella Prenga's hand up, which we'll do after we hear from the commissioners. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I'll start first with reading a clause from the Appendix G, and it describes or it defines what is called functionality dependent facility. And this kind of facility is the facility that is kind of married to the water. It cannot be functioning properly unless it's in close proximity to water. So this is the definition in the Appendix G. And at the end of the definition, it says the term, meaning the definition of this facility, the functionally dependent facility, does not include long-term storage, manufacture, sales, or service facilities. And let's put this definition aside. Then Appendix G moves to and 107.2.4, And it says BSA is authorized to issue a variance for the construction or substantial improvement of a functionally dependent facility, provided that. So look at this. Even when you look at a facility that cannot function without being very close to water, Appendix G is very strict, and it is specifying very strict conditions for the BSA to give them the authorization to waive the requirements of Appendix G. That tells us how serious we should take this application. That there are two main criteria that should be satisfied, and the Appendix G in number 1 under 107.2.4 says that criteria for section G 107.2.1 through 107.2.3 are met, and these all are related to a very thorough technical review from the BSA side to the submissions, including the design. And number 2, all methods and materials utilized to minimize flood damage during the base flood event, meaning that all methods used to support the structure, all methods used to analyze the structures, all methods used to design the structure, to design this project, are steered towards minimizing the flood damage, not the opposite. So this is just the first point I wanted to talk about. Then I move to the response from the applicant. The last hearing, we had tons of comments, starting from tell us where is the specified flood zone, the VE and the V zone start on a plan view, and then ranging to questioning the methodology used in designing this project, like the wave height, the pile length, the pile fixity, whether the lowering of the placement of the lowest floor structural element, bottom of the structural elements, can risk this structure or not. Does it increase the flood height or not? Does it increase the flood elevation or not? And I wanna just differentiate between flood heights and flood elevations, because I was very crystal clear last hearing, agreeing with the applicant, with the engineer, that flood elevations would not be increased because of what they are doing, but not flood heights. Flood heights are totally different flood elevations. If they are not, the writer of Appendix G, whom I believe good engineers, they wouldn't differentiate between the word elevations and heights. They would have just used one word, one term. But they differentiated for a reason. Flood elevation is where the flood comes at high, the highest point in the flood. But flood height is something related to buildings. And a building, depending on where is the lowest floor elevation is for that building, could have a flood height, and the adjacent building could have a different flood height, although they are located within the same flood area that is subject to the same flood elevation. So flood elevation could be the same at a specific area, but flood height could be different from a building to a building, from a structure to structure, depending on where the lowest floor elevation of that building is. And that was very crystal clear last hearing. And I did ask the applicant to explain it to me, why they don't think lowering the bottom of the structural element for the concession building below flood elevation doesn't increase the flood height, and they didn't answer. And last submission, they claimed that if we raise the bottom of the lowest structural element, that would actually increase the forces on the concession building. And I said, no, that's incorrect, inaccurate. It would actually decrease the forces and consequently make the design for the concession building less costly. And they came back this submission, and they agreed with me, but they are saying, yes, the cost for the concession building would go down, but we need to add additional ramps, and that's gonna add to the cost. And they submitted a construction cost that's claiming, I don't recall the exact number, but it's a significant increase in cost. And I agree, if this number is true, I would be sympathetic with them. But I'm asking them, why would you believe that you cannot add the ramps on the current configuration of the pier? Use part of the proposed pier to add some ramps to access the concession building after raising the lowest floor elevation above the flood. And I'm not sure if Chair, you could help me with that. They submitted to us construction cost on this, but I couldn't see any architectural proposal showing here's the deal. If we want to raise the flood in the lowest floor elevation for the concession building, the layout or the architectural plan for the pier should be increased in this way. I didn't see that. If somebody has seen it, please let me know. But I was anticipating at least a plan view showing me this is the extent of the pier and the concession building in elevations and in plan views that need to be implemented if we raise the first floor elevation above flood. But instead, I didn't get that. Instead, what I got was just cost. And I'm not buying these costs, and I will explain why. Now, on one of the main issues, and I wouldn't intervene with this in a traditional application, in an application that BSA is not required to go technically that deep and look into things. The design of the entire waterfront structure depends on the loads that are coming from flood, which in mainly wave loads. When the waves comes to the shore, something called wave breaking happens. And the height of the wave that's hitting a structure depends totally on the water depth at which this structure is located. I'm gonna show two pictures. Bear with me 1 second. I'm trying to share my screen.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. While you're doing that, can you, maybe your diagram actually explains this. Can you explain again why the flood height is different depending on the building?
Well, I'll get to that in a second. Let me just be finished with this. I switch to another diagram and I explain it.
Okay.
If you look at this diagram here, the thick black line, this line is the seabed. That blue line is what we call it the still water level. This is the water level when the storm hits that the water comes at. And then with the wind hitting, with the action of the wind, wave generates. And the wave height, when at perfect wind speed, that required Fitch limit, when the wave generates, waves start moving from the deep water to the shallow water. And when it comes near the shore, the wave starts breaking. And the depth at which the wave breaks depends on the wave height. In other words, to have a certain wave height, you have to have a certain depth of water underneath it to support it. It's like you wanna swim. You can swim in the deep sea, but if you go to a swimming pool that has 1 feet of water in it, you're not going to be swimming. It's not going to be able to carry you. Same thing here. The wave tries to swim over the still water depths, and if the still water depths is not deep enough to support it, it's going to break. And the way structural engineers design buildings in waterfronts is design them for the force that's coming from the wave. And that force is totally dependent on the wave height. So if you do not determine the wave height correctly, your design force is going to be incorrect. And if your design force is incorrect, your design is going to be incorrect. And this is one of the main issues for me with this submission. That last hearing, that wave height is about 80% of the water depth underneath it. Let's say you have a 10 feet water depth, that wave height that could be supported by that 10 feet water depth is up to 8 feet. They are looking at it is they are looking at the water depth from the top of the pier, which is elevation 10, to the top of the still water level, which I believe is elevation, I don't recall, let's say it's 14. Let's say, I'm not saying they are saying that, but let's say it's 14. So the water depth they are considering is just 4 feet. And the wave height that they put on top of this is 80% of that 4 feet, which is 3.2. My point is the water depth is not from the top of the pier to the top of the storm elevation or the still water level. It's from the seabed all the way to top of the still water level, which is much more. Seabed is at elevation -16. Top of pier is at elevation 10. The difference is 26 feet. That's huge. So when you look at the height of the wave, in my view, the design wave should be much higher than they are considering. Now, are they just saying this like from vacuum? No, they gave me some reasons, but I'm not buying them. And I'll move to the next slide and I explain why.
Can I ask a question though?
Yes.
The wave height is also arguably based on historical wave heights. So for example, in Hawaii, the historical wave heights are, you know, these building height waves, right?
Yes.
But,
yes.
but in Island, they're only maybe, the biggest wave you ever saw maybe was 15 feet high or something like that. So even though
that's true. Yes.
much greater, right?
Yes, I did look into this, but the data they are presenting, I don't need to probably put the next slide. That if you look at the configuration, you have a pier at elevation 10, but underneath that pier, you have water body. When the water hits, when the wave hits, the wave is gonna come at elevation, whatever, let's say 17 or so. It's not gonna go suddenly because of the presence of that pier. It's not gonna go down suddenly. It's gonna continue at the same height. And actually, because there is a hydraulic connection between the water above the pier and the water below the pier, the wave is gonna continue at the same height, more or less, and hit the building. This is one thing. Now, if we move to the historical data, yes, they gave us some data from the LaGuardia, but I'm not sure whether these data were collected during a design storm event. My point is, if you collected these data during a storm event, that's 100-year flood event, you might be right. Although you have to revert to the ASCE 10, the governing code here, whether the code allows you to throw its procedure away and just use historical data. New York City Building Code, when looking at the seismic forces, buildings, New York City building codes give a procedure to calculate the seismic forces, but instead it gives an alternative. If you don't like that procedure, you can go to your site and perform a site-specific study. Is this the case with the ASCE 10? I couldn't see that. ASCE 710, I couldn't see that. It's that there is a procedure that says that the wave height should be considered as 78% of the water depth. And if this is the procedure specified, to deviate from that, you have to have a good reason. And like I said again, I'm not sure whether the historical data that were presented from LaGuardia were based on events that are comparable to a 100-year flood event. So that's, if the answer is no, that's a big deal. And this is one major issue for that application. The second thing is when they designed the platform, the pier, and the concession building, the length of the pile in their model last time, in the calculations that they submitted last time, I looked at the model and I was suspicious regarding the length of the pile from the bottom of from the floor elevation of the pier to what we call it the point of fixity, where you consider this platform fixed. This entire pier and the concession building are like sitting on group of stakes. These stakes are the piles. If this pile, the length of that pile is not specified and designed correctly, the entire structure will be very flexible and it's gonna go back and forth when the storm hits. My comment last hearing was, did you look at the point of fixity? And they came back this hearing, yes. And we looked at it and we concluded that it's this. If you look at the borings, and I did look at it myself, 3 and 4, almost 20 feet of soup, weight of hammer material that doesn't have any strength in it. So elevation negative 60, and you go back another 15 or 20 feet, that's plus you add the point of fixity to that. That's too much more than what they are specifying and using in their design for the pile lengths. They need to look at this. Otherwise, they're gonna be designing something and constructing something else because the conditions are totally different. What they are doing is not consistent with what it's in their borings and in their site. So this is the second thing. And again, regarding the cost, if tweaking the design to make the lowest floor above flood elevation for this concession building is gonna impose significant cost to the project, I would be sympathetic. But for now, I have no floor plans. I'm not sure why the ramps cannot be added on top of the pier as it is right now. And even if you want to increase the dimensions for the piers, why would that increase 30%, add 30% of the piling to the equation? That the amount of piles that they are considering right now to be additional is 30%. Why? Why do you want to add more piles? You already have 2 piles. All what you need to do is, instead of the span is 20 feet, make it 30 feet. Just widen the pier. You don't need to like add another row of piles. It could be achieved without adding the piles, which
Sorry,
is actually
you're
governing
sorry.
the cost increase.
Commissioner Sheta, you're breaking up at that last thing. You said, why do you need to add more piles? Just make the pier wider and it would
Yes.
be what, a cantilever?
No, right now the span is about 20 feet for the pier, if I recall. 2 piles spaced 20 feet. If you want to widen this pier to accommodate the ramps, instead of 20 feet span, do this. Make them 30 feet and put the ramp on top of that additional 10.
Right, so they did have an answer to that actual comment because they said, oh, you could just tell us to widen the pier and then we could put the ramps there. But they said that there's a DEC restriction on the water coverage. So, you know, they have, let's just say, lots of pressures coming from different sides. And I know from direct experience that DEC is very strict about water coverage and like shadowing the fauna and things like that. So the idea would be, how do you come up with a solution that doesn't widen the pier to the point where DEC would say, that's not okay, it's additional water coverage, we're not good. I don't know if that's 20 feet or bust, or if it's 25 feet or 23 feet or something like that. So
It's like floor area of a building. If you have a certain coverage right now, that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying the current footprint of the pier is 10,000, make it 15. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is play with the configuration for the pier to use the current cover. I understand that DEC has restrictions when it comes to installing waterfronts. I did deal with that previously, but what I'm saying is reconfigure the pier to add some service area where you need the ramp and to deduct them from where you don't need them. That's my point. It's
Madam-
reconfiguration.
Oh, just 1 second, please. Let him finish and then I'll go to questions. I really want to just have him wrap up his and then we can have a, okay. Okay, continue.
Like I said, that wave height issue is one of the main issues for me. The pile fixity, I plead to them to look at it because it's a dangerous, I repeat it again, it's a dangerous, and I have seen disasters with designing things with pile fixity not determined correctly. And I believe the way it is determined right now need to be relooked at. And number 3, reconfiguration of that pier. First, present to us the architectural plan that you judge the additional cost based on. And if you believe that you need additional for the pier, why you configure the pier to add some footprint where you need the ramps and duct them from where you don't need that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I just want to say that one of the reasons that I was suggesting just having the toilet room at grade is a way to avoid the need for ramps at all, so that you have just a little bit of the concession and one toilet room at the pier grade, and then everything else upstairs where you don't need ramps because you have equivalent services on the lower level. So we're kind of working on the same thing, but I actually myself worked recently on a pier where DEC didn't let us enlarge the pier by even a 5-foot change over what there was before. And that wasn't to increase it. That was keeping it in the same location as it was before. We weren't allowed to increase like the T by 5 feet. So they can be very strict. Of course, we're not New York City government that's asking another government agency or anything like that, what I was involved in, but I do have that experience. But anyway, point taken. So I'd like to go to Commissioner Shibeta, and then I'll go to the hands up from Jella Prenga and Vice Chair. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. I really have nothing more to add besides I really want to hear an answer to Commissioner Sheta's safety concerns. Outside of that, I don't have any other further comments.
Okay. Okay. And Ms. Prenga, you had your hand up from the beginning. Sorry.
It's okay. I was waiting. I knew you were going to go down the line with the commissioners, but I just wanted to add one thing. There was an email that came in from the applicant. It came in on September 30th, and maybe it was missed because it came in so late. It was uploaded to SharePoint. I just want to let you know that in regards to speaking to Commissioner Silver about expanding the scope of the project to include the promenade, they let me know that the promenade improvements will be addressed by $16.5 million of dedicated funding in an upcoming project managed by the New York, New Jersey Port Authority as part of the LaGuardia Air Train. Parks will be reviewing this project in order to ensure that it meets our requirements for accessibility and design Furthermore, Parks Marina project will provide a pier and restrooms to the public with no access restrictions during seasonal and daylight open hours. The restroom specifically was one of the top requests we heard during our public scoping meeting at the start of the design. So I just wanted to let you know that that's an answer they had to that question that came in later.
Okay, that's great. I did not see that. Maybe I downloaded the material. I read the materials before that submission, 2019. Okay, I'll look. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And Commissioner, Vice Chair Shanda.
Yes, thank you, Jella, for bringing that up. That was one of my comments. The other one is based on my experience when I was involved with the Hunters Point South project, which had a park along the waterfront. This park was approved, a portion of the park was built. The remaining portion of the park that was approved but was not built had to be rebuilt. And at that time, this was a gap of, I think, 3 or 4 years. Between that time period, DEC required required a significant change in the design because it wanted further reduction of overwater coverage. So DEC is extremely strict about increasing any bit of water coverage. As a matter of fact, any new construction that would happen, even if that means replacement of an existing one, they look towards reducing the water coverage as much as possible. And this was a city-owned site, city project, city-funded project, and even in that, DEC was not willing to give much room. So I accept the applicant's argument, and Parks is quite has worked on these projects in various ways in different areas by the waterfront. And I think the Parks team and their applicants and their consultants are quite well versed with the requirements of DEC and other state regulations when it comes to waterfront.
Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so let's move on. Tony, you're muted. You're muted. Tony.
Sorry, that concludes the public review session. We'll now commence with the public hearing. So good morning. This is the public hearing for October 6, 2020, 10 a.m. session. The first item to be discussed is new cases on the SOC calendar, 11407 BC, 7-05, 152nd Street, Queens.
Hello.
Hello, state your
Good
name,
morning.
please.
Good morning. It's Eric Palatnik looking for my notes.
Okay.
Good morning, Eric Palatnik. State your name. How are you, everybody?
Okay, let me sway you in. Okay, you the only one, Eric?
No, I think we have a whole team. If they could all figure out what's going on, we were all faboozled at the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm here
Oh.
just in case. Hi.
We should have myself. You should have Tim O'Sullivan. You should have Hiram Rothkrug or Amber Cartelin, whose name I always mispronounce, and Tim O'Sullivan.
Tim O'Sullivan.
Yeah, it's Tim O'Sullivan here.
There he
Okay.
goes.
And Hiram,
And-
right?
There's a 076 last 3 digits and a 630 last 3 digits. Is that Amber? I know Amber is usually on Zoom, but maybe can't.
3561 is her last. 561, did you say? Was one of those 561?
No, 630 and 076.
Nope.
No. Okay, so when Amber joins,
Yeah,
we can see her in
She
different-
probably will. Hey, Elise, while we're talking, can you ask Clarissa to give Hiram and Amber a call? Just help toggle her in. And we'll go to Amber at the end. She's the one that did all the noise studies. And I know, Madam Chair, you had a lot of questions about the noise study. So she could talk about that.
Okay,
So
go ahead.
We're ready?
Tony?
Raise your right hand. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
We do. I do.
Okay, proceed.
I do. All right. Well, thank you very much. First, it's been a long time since I've seen everybody, and I want to acknowledge everybody looks great, and you're all doing a fantastic job. And this is a very difficult time as schools are shutting down again today, and the business world and the financial world of New York City is in a very difficult position, and extremely on the verge of bankruptcies, and people are losing everything or on the cusp of it. And this is no different. We are a struggling New York story right here. And I'm glad you made the time for us, and thank you. The first thing I wanted to suggest is Commissioner Otley Brown, you're 1,000% right. I went through the application with a fine-tooth comb the last 12 hours, and I noticed every single sloppy error that you noticed, which includes some of the floor area off. I have it all charted out for you all now, and I'm going to put it into a real chart for you, but it doesn't negate that it should have been a lot more accurate, and I want to say that from the beginning. But having said that, we're here today to ask.
Can I just interrupt for a second? So as not to have the board do this in the public and go through all the mistakes in an application. You went through it with a fine-tooth comb the day before the hearing. Can you please do it the day before the submission?
Yes, I will. And I apologize for that. I will.
And I don't want to hear more apologies for I wish I'd done it before.
It
No
won't
more
happen.
apologies.
It will not happen again. That's what I'm
Okay,
telling you. It won't happen again.
Okay.
And the difference, and thank you for understanding. The difference in the floor areas that are going on is the previous approved building was 15,087 square feet. The current, that's a 1.85 FAR. The current proposal is for 15624, which is the same building. Nothing's changed. So it went from 15,087 to 15,624. Went from a 1.85 to 1.92 FAR. But that change was just a change in the calculations. That was not a change in the. Can you still hear me, by the way? Because my phone just went blank.
What do you mean it was a change in the calculations? I don't get that. Nope, we lost you, Eric. Or are you, can you hear me? Somebody acknowledge me.
Yes,
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. All right, so we lost Eric. Elise, please reach out to him and get him back. And if necessary, maybe Kurt could call him and do that invite. That seems to work pretty well.
Yes, and we also had phone number 561 join us.
That's
great.
probably could probably be higher. 561
Yeah.
3561?
or Amber. Amber.
That's me. It's Amber Cartalian with Equity Environmental.
Okay, so while we have you, Tony, you want to swear in Ms. Cartalian?
Sure. Amber, do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and to respond honestly to board member questions?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so and then Mr. Steinhaus is going to be trying to reach.
Yes, we're calling now with the phone number that he registered.
Thank you. We have a lot of bumpy connections today. And Commissioner Shetta, your connection was very bumpy. So I don't know if you have a hotspot on your phone. You could try alternating between your Wi-Fi that's in wherever you are and your phone. That's what I do. When I'm weak in one place, I switch to the other and hoping that it cures it. Ms. Fullader, are you able to continue this to some extent? You don't have to talk about the things that Mr. Palatnik was talking about, but you could talk about your things.
I mean, I have notes and I could begin, but I don't want to, he has a plan of whatever
sure.
he wants to say.
Okay.
Maybe Amber, if could address how she did the noise in the meantime.
That's a good idea. Why don't we have Ms. Cortalian talk about the noise studies? Did you hear the comments about the noise studies?
I did. I had a second to listen in on the executive review session, so I did hear the comments. So we had.
There you go.
All right, did I get back in?
Yes.
Oh, yes, you're back in. Okay.
All right,
So
I
we-
apologize. I don't know what happened to me.
So we had just jumped to Ms. Cortalian, but you can continue now because she only had a chance to say one sentence.
All right, so Amber, thank you for making the call. So to clarify for the board, so that you're fully aware of the actions that we're taking, you did list them. The first thing we're doing is there's been some inconsistencies between what was approved by the board, what was built at the site, and approved by Department of Buildings. And that's what I was just explaining, that it was a 1.85 approval originally. It's a 1.92 FAR approval now. That's a difference of about 600 square feet. The action that we're primarily asking to do is to change.
No, stop,
Yeah.
stop. I had asked you before you got disconnected. You said the difference is in calculation. How is it a difference in calculation? I don't get it. It sounds like more floor area.
The bulk envelope of the building did not change. So it looks like the draftsman that produced the original, it's the same architectural firm, but the draftsman that did the original filing did not apply the right floor area calculation. This was done 12 years ago. The draftsman is no longer with Frank Petrusso's office, but that's the only thing we could attribute it to.
Sorry. What does the right floor area calculation mean?
The correct floor area calculation is 15,624 square feet.
Mr. Palatnik, you're going to need to get the architect to answer my question because you're just going around in circles. I'd like to understand what it is they didn't do in the last one. For example, did they not include the exterior walls in the floor area? Did they not?
I'll find out the specificity. We'll find out with specificity what mistake the difference was made. When we tried to determine it, nobody could figure it out because the calculations are 100% the same. Computer programming in the last 13 years, as you know, changed dramatically. A lot of that was done by hand, so we'd have to imagine some of it could have been that, but we don't know what the difference is, and I will endeavor to find out. But nonetheless, it's still well below the maximum permitted of the 2.4 FAR, and to the naked eye, there's no real change to there's no substantive change to the building. And that's what we're here. One of the things we're bringing back and bringing to the board's attention, that there is a change and that we'd like to fix it. So we do agree with you. It needs to be addressed.
All right. Thank you. All right. Go on.
If I may continue, yes. So the next issue that we were addressing is the play areas. As the board suggested, the original approval did not indicate any outdoor play areas. We'll come back to Amber in a second and talk about noise studies. Now there are two existing play areas. There's one in the rear at the top of the first floor. There's one at the side at the ground level. And now there's proposed to be one at the third floor. What we're asking you to do, that links right into the third floor. The third floor of the building was previously a mixture of uses. It included both office to some extent on the third floor and daycare downstairs. It's the same daycare, it's Children of America, that seeks to take over the space at the third floor. They seek to take over the space so that they can create a recreation room or a multi-purpose room, which will be about 1,300 square feet. We showed a 332 square foot office in that space. That office, will make clear, is accessory to the daycare. That's their office. There's no outsiders there. That's office space for them. And then the remaining space at that level is going to be utilized as classroom space. So that's 3,763 square feet in total at the third floor, which will be, as I said just a moment ago, 1,300 square feet will be for the recreation room, multi-purpose room. 332 square feet will be for the office. It leaves about 2,265 square feet left over for the classroom space. It's important to note for all the board's edification and knowledge that the outdoor spaces are non-simultaneous uses. The occupancy for the building is not increasing. And this is going to be important when you get to Amber's conversation about sound, because the whole purpose of all these sound studies everybody's talking about are to protect the kids from themselves. The sound studies are to make sure that the kids aren't making noise that are going to disturb the kids. Well, all the spaces that we're talking about with the sound studies are all spaces that the kids are either in one of the two spaces. They're either outside or they're inside. On the third floor, for example, they'll either be in the recreation room when the weather's not so good, or they'll be outside. Same thing downstairs. That's the idea of it. It's just like you can imagine with your own kids, you know, when they go to school, when they go outside to play, there's not a busload of kids coming in to take their space inside the building. Obviously, they go outside, the inside space is empty. So Amber's going to talk about that. And there were two play areas that were not shown. Yes.
Mr. Palatnik, please hold on. Commissioner Otley Brown has a question.
Maybe you could just
Yeah.
answer one of the questions I had asked in review. Why can't the office just be UG3 since it's part of the whole daycare?
It can be. It can be. It can be. It certainly can be. And it probably should have been that way to begin with. So we will change that. Happy to change that. So if I can continue on, I'll give you more of the changes, and there's not much left. There's a number of parking spaces. The board approval was for 18 spaces. At the time, I think that there were 15 required. Now we have 15 spaces, and there are 14 required. So by the reduction in the office space, we reduced the number of required parking, which is 1 per 300 for the office space, and it's 1 per 1,500 square feet for the daycare space. So at this point, actually, if you eliminate even the office, we'll even have a less of a required parking. So we're okay on parking. To answer the board's question in review session, if I could just step out a little bit, the building has been operating well for the last decade. If you go through the board's past resolution, I know the board asked the question of the previous conditions and were they complied with, and they all were. And the ideas that came up then, if you look through the numbers that were provided, 190 students, I think, was the number at the max. 150 to 190 was the projection in 2008. They're at 199 students now. And if I can go to the number of students, just to educate you what they've been doing with students, they were approved at 190 students. And this goes to the vice chair's question and all the board's question about growth. They're at the number they anticipated they would be at, which is 190 when they took the application in front of you in 2008. They've slightly gone above it. They're at 199, but they're pretty close, a little above it. And their DOH approval is for 210. So they're within the DOH. So we're back to you to ask you to add 40 more children to the 199 children that are there now. That'll give us a total of 239 children. There is a strong demand for space here. This is the only daycare that services Whitestone proper. There is nothing else that services this community. If you're breaking neighborhoods down, forget about the zip code fiasco that's going on in New York City right now. But if you break it down as far as neighborhoods go, as far as natural dividing lines of roadways, of things like that, this neighborhood of Whitestone doesn't have anywhere for daycare. As a result, there's a waiting list, and that's why Children of America is asking you for the opportunity to take over that space.
So you have approval for 210 students.
Right.
Is there a current application in the works for the 240 or 239?
That will come, and we can include that in our statement. That'll come after the fact. It's chicken and an egg. DOH needs to see approval from the city first for the zoning of it, and then they can give us their licenses. We could give you a letter from somebody who's handling the DOH component if that would, fill the record a little bit, give you some more comfort on that. But
yeah, that would be helpful
yeah,
for the record.
we're happy to give you that. And that's essentially the application. I mean, not much else, not much changing. I think Commissioner Otley Brown, you said it perfect. It's nestled in a good spot. It works well. Everybody lives with it. It doesn't mess anybody up. Everybody's very happy with it. I think. I don't think I heard any objections when I said community board. And
someone's shouting, please, whoever that
Mary?
is. Please. I'm muting. I'm muting.
Carlo, mute.
Carlo, muted him. Okay. So I just wanted to please, we did have questions from commissioners though. So after kind of a speech, can you please just answer the questions?
Oh, well, hopefully a lot of that answered a lot of the questions because a lot of the questions. But
No, no, no. Let me just ask the question to cut to the chase so we don't go on and on, right? We had questions about the curbside drop off. Commissioner Shonda was asking about this new school aspect, new students, or if it's being handled in a different way. There were a bunch of questions about the lay-by
Right.
lane. Who's going to be answering?
I'll come in and I'll answer a lot of them. And just, you know, I did try to incorporate a lot of those in the discussion I just had, but I'll come back into them. And also, for the board's edification, and by no means are we in any way, we're happy we have the hearing. It was nearly impossible for us to actually pay attention to the review session. There were technical difficulties. You know, it's very difficult for the team to take in all the information and get ready right away. And it was made even more difficult here that none of us could get in. If you talk to Mr. Costanza, none of us were able to get in. So we weren't able to get in. So while you were all talking, which was great, we were all emailing with Carlo Costanza and Tony Matias about our inability to access the information that was being discussed. So
Wait,
please
sorry,
forgive us.
Oh, I thought that was the Zoom, not the YouTube. It was the Zoom, wasn't it?
Yeah, but we were all trying to get into the Zoom, so we knew what we were doing. So our time was being, if you look at the timing in the email, so
Stop. I have to just interrupt because I need to move on to other hearings. We can't just keep going on and on with this. So what I want to know is, first, you're not supposed to come into the Zoom hearing until your case is called. You should be watching the review session on the YouTube video. So my question is, were you not able to see us on YouTube?
I'll explain the technical problem we all encountered, and there were 8 of us that encountered it. The problem was that we were able to get onto YouTube, and while we were doing that, everybody clicked onto Zoom because you could watch you on Zoom also. When everybody did that, they received an error code when they clicked their their ID. So when they clicked their error code, although I was watching on YouTube. While I was watching on YouTube, I had my wife calling, I had Travis calling, I was emailing while I was trying to pay attention to the review session. Tim O'Sullivan was calling. Amber was calling. We were all trying to call while we were watching you on YouTube.
Please, I just want a yes/no answer. You need to only, please stop, Eric, please stop. So I just want to say, do not call into the Zoom until your case is called in the hearing. Watch the entire thing on YouTube. That's the instruction we're giving to all the applicants. I don't want to hear about every single person calling. I just want to know whether you could hear it on YouTube. That's a yes or no
we were able
question.
to. I think we had the wrong meeting ID number is what
Okay,
I think that's a good idea.
Yes or no question.
If
That's
I
it.
could, I think a great
All
idea
right,
would be
move
that
on,
technical
move on.
difficulties will be something that should be discussed with your case manager and then talked about offline.
No problem.
I'd be happy to.
I can go through the comments. I rewatched it after I had time.
Okay, great.
That would be great, Elise.
Okay, so I just wanted to, we heard your comment about trash, and we will incorporate that into the plans. That was Commissioner Chanda's comment. Then you also asked, we will look into all the numbers to clarify, but Eric already explained that. Drop off and pickup, we can have, Tim probably can help us create an operations plan, which we can get back to explaining how the drop off and pickup works, and we can fix that on the plans to make that clearer. I know the chair had that comment, unless he wants to speak on that now, but it's probably better in writing. And then you asked, but Amber probably has to help us with this question. What protects children from the HVAC systems on the 3rd floor terrace? We will address that. You said open noise and air quality, but we were discussing what areas counted towards the play area and what didn't, and now we're clear on that. And the fire department roof access, we'll get back to the fire department and explain how we will provide top access. And I think that's all I have, unless you have anything.
Yeah, that sounds like it. And you don't have to answer these questions now, obviously, to the extent you can, fine. But if you can't, then it's a submission. Okay. Thank you.
And
okay. Yeah.
I just wanted to clear one thing up. This is Amber with Equity. So at the time that we had conducted the noise monitoring in field, it was January. So it was cold weather. So we weren't able to, we had coordinated with Kitty Academy. We weren't able to capture the noise generated by the existing play areas So, we use standard factors, the seeker acceptable factors for standard noise generation from a daycare use, which is
Okay.
the highest noise level for that.
Okay, so now we know that we're not talking about a delta between a model of the existing play areas versus the new one. We're talking about all 3 play areas as if new.
Yes, that is now understood.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then there was that question about how to protect the kids who are on that new third floor, because there's AC equipment up there, which is noisy and sometimes smelly. What the plan is for handling that. Okay.
Okay.
All right, I think that's it. Any other questions that you can answer now, or?
There was also a question about if noise attenuation is being proposed.
Yes.
From Commissioner Shelton.
Amber, do you want to discuss the noise attenuation or lack of?
So in the original noise report, that one that was reviewed by DEP from the November letter, the 2 existing play areas were considered in the no action, and then the with action, the terrace and multi-purpose room are not going to be simultaneous uses, so there was no attenuation proposed for that level. We're going to have to take another look when we revise to consider basically the no action as no outdoor occupancy of any of the spaces per the commissioner's comments, and we'll address that.
Okay, so, but the study has to look at both the impact of the play area on the children inside the building and obviously the receptors. Outside.
That's understood. Right. Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think that's it. Any other comments from commissioners? Otherwise, we can go to the public.
Okay, the case that we're discussing is 11407BZ 7-05, 152nd Street, Queens.
And while we're at it, how much time do you need to respond to these questions?
Probably just a couple of weeks. Everything is very straightforward.
Okay.
If you would like to speak on this application, please use Zoom's raise hand feature, or if you're calling in by telephone, please press *9 so that you can be recognized.
We don't see any hands up in our. I see Eric's hand up, but I mean, I
didn't know how this works.
I'm just trying to understand whether any of the attendees in the kind of waiting room are interested. So it's *9 for an attendee in the waiting room who would like to speak on this application, correct?
Yes, or Zoom's raise hand feature.
Yeah. Okay, so I don't see anybody coming in, right?
No.
Okay, so, all right, Eric, Mr. Platnick, you had your hand up. Is there something you wanted to say before we move on to the next one? We understood.
No, thank you for your time, and I'm sorry we had the technical issues, and we'll abide by your direction moving ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, take care. Thank you for calling in, everyone.
Okay. The next item is 30313BZ 506-510, Brook Avenue, the Bronx. But this is Jeffrey Chester. Yes.
Mhm.
Okay.
Here he is. When you can hear us, unmute yourself, please, Mr. Chester.
Yes. Hi.
Yeah.
Okay. You have other people in your team?
Yes, I do. Looking at the screen now, but I should have Antonia Walker,
She's in.
Shira Gidding. She may have just called in.
Yeah, she's on.
Okay.
Or
Lourdes
let's see. Yeah.
Zapata, the president of Sobro.
Okay.
Victor Bodie Lawson, if he's
Yes.
on, I know he's having some issues.
No, he's on.
Okay.
Or
And
if you-
possibly Woody Victor of Capellino Associates. I'm not sure if he's joining today or not.
We have, yeah, Victor Bodie Lawson. Okay.
Okay.
Who did you say the last person is from
Woody
Capellino?
Victor. Woody Victor is the name.
I don't see him. Okay.
It's okay. I think we have enough of our team to be able to proceed.
Okay, raise your right hands. Do you affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth in nothing but the truth in your testimony before this board and respond honestly to board member questions?
I do.
Okay, please state your name for the record and proceed. Mr. Chester.
Jeffrey Chester, Schuman Updike, Kaufman and Gerber for the applicant. So we were able to connect to the review session. A little bit of difficulties, but we were able to connect to the review session and hear the comments. I'm assuming at this point, no one wants us to go through the general presentation. The only thing I want to say is it's a rather minimal application. So, you know, we're staying within the bulk envelope of the originally approved variant. We're asking for 4 additional units. Basically, we're dropping 1 studio, which is now going to be a superintendent unit, I guess. And we're adding 5 1-bedrooms. 2 of the previous variances we asked for are no longer necessary because of changes to the zoning resolution. So that and the extension of time, which is really important because of various changes at Sobro and trying to get this project into the pipeline. That being said, I'm going to try to have different people on the team answer some of the specific questions. I think one of the specific questions had to do with the difference in affordability from the original application to this application.
Yeah.
I think we went back and we were not quite clear what HPD application Sobro was applying for in the original iteration of this application. I do see that on the resolution, undoubtedly in the papers that I submitted, it was a 40 to 80% range. Now it's my understanding we're going to use the program that's called the new construction program. In the narrative, we said we were going to use either the ELA or the new construction. I think at this point, they're leaning towards the new construction in their negotiation.
Yeah, sorry, it's not called new construction, it's called neighborhood construction program, NCP.
Okay, well then I'm going to make that correction. Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, the NCP or neighborhood construction program. I think there's a range of AMIs that we previously provided. You know, down as low as 30%, which I'm not sure was indicated on the previous application, and up as far as 80%. In addition to that, there's a set aside for homeless units, which was not part of the previous application. I don't know if Shira or Lourdes has anything to add to that specific response.
Right. I'm just curious because there's sort of a disconnect between your statement and the statement of facts that the last project was all 60%, which is obviously of AMI, which is obviously a completely different mix than what the resolution says, right? And so part of what you're basing your argument on is, look, we're now being required to do this very broad mix that where the 80, because you're allowed to have 20%, 6% of the units and 23% of the units at 70 and 80%. So you could argue maybe that offsets the very low that you didn't have before. But the point is that perhaps, I don't know whether you looked at the actual application materials as opposed to the resolution before. I just want to kind of, you know, complete the thought, or perhaps you amend your argument. Perhaps you say, and I don't know if it's a true statement, that the before we had a 40 to 6, I forget what I said, 40 to 80% mix in, yeah, AMI mix in the prior application. Now we're being asked to go down to 30, and we're not having as, I think your mix doesn't have any 70s, maybe, something like that. Anyway, perhaps you could make an argument that you're being required to go down to 30. The 30, I think, is for the homeless housing. And so that is a significant hit on the income that you had before. And then I don't know whether HPD is requiring that the units be smaller or that their guidelines allow you to make bigger units. They just won't fund for the bigger units, in which case you could say, we'll be building bigger units, but the bigger units cost X much. And now, as they cost X much, but will only be funded for the amount in the revised HPD ELA regulations, something like that, because it's the premise in your statement of facts for the change is incorrect based on the resolution. Now, the resolution may be incorrect, and the only way to verify that is for you to look at your old application materials.
Okay.
Okay, so it just needs to be tightened up because right now it's not a true statement or something.
Okay, I think I understand, and I think we can do that. We can make an amendment to that narrative.
Okay.
In terms of design guidelines, it's my understanding, I don't know if it's an absolute demand or not, and maybe one of my team members can provide some additional light on that. But I do believe it's a preference of HPD to have these smaller units so they can in fact get more units. And when this type of financing is somewhat competitive, the projects they're looking more favorably on are the ones that can provide sort of the most bang for the buck, if you will. That's my understanding anyway. I don't know if Shiro or Lourdes wants to amplify that.
And you're all of you are muted, so if you're speaking, we can't hear you. Okay.
Tony, can you please speak to the guidelines?
Unmute yourself.
I can speak to that. The HPD design guidelines do have a range of footage that's acceptable per unit type. So we do have to stay within that limit.
So one argument, so this is to Mr. Chester because he's forming the argument in the statement of facts. If the units as designed in the prior approval are larger than those in the range, then according to what I'm understanding, HPD would not look favorably on the project because it's arguably wasteful, right? So therefore it needs to be redesigned to fit within their guidelines. That's right. One of the many arguments that you can be making for why this is a necessary change, but it needs to be correctly articulated. So then you would say our old units were, just to throw out a number, 650 square feet for a 1-bedroom, and the guidelines say they're only allowed to go from 300 to 450 square feet. So we're 200 square feet over. So HPD would never accept that. So we had to redesign the project, something like that. Okay.
Understood. So I think there were some other comments. One had to do with, and this is going to be for you as well, Antonia. One had to do with the materials that were going to actually be used on the facade. I don't know if your request was to have those actually noted on the plans.
So they're already noted on some of the elevations, but not all of them. So I wanted all of the materials to be called out on the elevations. That's
okay, understood. We can update our elevations to include all of the materials.
Okay.
Okay, and I'm just trying to go over these. Oh, the other question had to do with a support letter from HPD. I'm being told, our project manager here, Shira, who I'm not sure is on, that it's difficult to get. Their new policy is that they don't like to issue them, but we will circle back and try. And we will give you a more definitive response on that.
Okay, Miss Gidding is on the phone if she'd like to add.
Shira, you want to add anything to that? You unmute yourself. I don't know if she's having.
With a call and you unmute with a *6. Is that right, Kurt?
Yes.
Yes, *6.
Hi.
Yeah.
Oh, hi. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, great. Thank you. I had tried to join by Zoom, but the link didn't work. But I think this will be workable. I would just echo what Jeffrey said. It's my understanding that it's no longer HPD's common practice to issue the soft commitment letters, as I think some of the members had also expressed earlier on in the comment section. So, and especially now in terms of the, uncertainties around funding, but we will certainly try to obtain such a letter. Everyone on our team would be equally as interested in getting one as you could imagine. So.
Okay.
I have a question.
No, and before, as long as we have you, can you just identify, are you like the finance specialist, the housing finance specialist for this group?
Yes, I'm a consultant, a finance consultant to Sobro.
Okay, so my question, and Commissioner Shanda will follow, is what are you kind of hearing on the street about the funding streams of any of these things? Does Ella still actually exist, or or are you hearing everything just on hold and moving forward after the elections, or are you hearing anything like that?
I've not heard that any of their financing programs like Ella and NCP are on hold or no longer, in effect. I've heard that, there's a large pipeline with HPD that they had been planning to close this year in calendar year 2020 that, of course, has slowed. But that they have been closing some deals this year. And I've, just very anecdotally have been hearing that 2021 is looking better. But I think, the details on that are pretty murky still.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. I appreciate that. Commissioner Shanda, you had a question?
Yes, I had asked for the soft commitment letter because based on my past experience, that was provided. If it is no longer being considered, that's okay with me. I think this is just a note to ourselves, is when we do issue the resolution, we should be a little bit more flexible in our terminology, because there could be some follow-up changes to the financing and requirements. So we should afford the applicant the flexibility to make the necessary adjustment as the various funding sources would be requiring going forward. I do know there is a pipeline, and HPD, HDC, and various other state agencies are working together to make sure financing does flow and prioritize them. So so it's a matter of when, it's not if.
But it depends on the federal government and what it's willing to give the city of New York, et cetera, et cetera.
Well, yeah, I guess then they won't be going for the federal program. This will be all tax credit programs and such. So there'll be less reliance on federal home loans and other things like that.
Okay.
If I could add one more.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm sorry, this is Shira. Just to add one more point, trying to be responsive to some of the comments. As far as I think there was a question asked about the term sheets that were included in the application. And, we included the NCP term sheet that is currently published on HPD's website. It's from 2016. That term sheet is in the process of being updated right now, but the agency has not issued the update. But what we've been told is that the updated version will look a lot in terms of affordability like the Ella program. So that's how we currently have the affordability program, modeled. And of course, we don't have a final affordability mix, but that's what we'll be looking out for.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Anything else?
Yeah, I think there was one other question, if my notes are correct, which had to do with where we are with the violations in the
Yes.
city. And I had an offline conversation with Shira about this. I'm not handling it. Another attorney is handling it. They're negotiating, my understanding, they're negotiating directly with the city law department. The city law department is favorably disposed to come to some type of global settlement, since in essence, it's a vacant site now, and a lot of the violations were things like boiler violations and things like that, obviously the building's not going to be repaired, it's going to be knocked down, and a new building is going to be replaced. It's my understanding that before they will come to a final settlement with us, that they want to see that we are firmly in the HPD pipeline. That's what I've been told.
Okay.
So,
which makes sense. You'd be taking money away from your project to pay an ECB violation for a building that you're tearing down, which is kind of ironic, right?
yes.
Yes, understood. Okay.
Jeff, excuse me.
Thank you.
No, I just wanted to confirm your understanding, Jeff. I was on the phone yesterday with Alan Kleinberg from the city's law department, so I can confirm the statements that you offered.
Great.
Okay. Great. Okay. All right. Any other comments from commissioners, staff, anybody? Any other questions? No? Great. Thank you very much for your.
Tracy.
Oh, I can't see her. I guess she's on my next page. Okay, go ahead, Tracy.
The remediation hasn't begun yet. I just wanted to confirm if you would need a note on the plans, or we could just mention in the resolution that the remediation as previously required will be undertaken.
I think it should be both places, plans and resolution.
Okay,
So
we'll make a note on the plan, and it'll be in the resolution as well.
Thanks.
I have a question. Should we try to close this project?
I know you're not asking me, so.
No, this is a question to Madam Chair. I think most of the comments seem to be corrections and not, so that's the question I'm asking.
Okay, that's a fair question. Yeah, there are corrections, there are improvements on some of the details in the statement of facts. It's mostly that, I think. And in terms of the drawings, nothing other than to add the note that Ms. Benke mentioned about the
and the material.
And the materials.
Yes, okay. Yeah, it's fair. Okay, so, but before we do that, we certainly do need to hear from the public in case there's a reason why we shouldn't close this, okay?
Fair enough.
Okay, the case that we're discussing from members of the public is 30313BZ 506510 Brook Avenue in the Bronx.
You would like to speak on this application and you're calling in, although I don't see anyone called in, please press *9 or use Zoom's raise hand feature.
Okay, so the first question is, while we're waiting, how long do you need to make this submission? And I would ask also, please, Mr. Chester, when you make your submission, to have a cover letter that explains exactly what's been changed in the statement of facts and in the drawings. So it saves the commissioner's time looking for changes. And that, of course, the drawings have to include one set that's bubbled, where the changes are bubbled, and one set that's clean, both of which signed and sealed, okay?
So I have a question. And I've never done this with the board before, but I was just thinking about it because in the transactional legal world, what we often do is we pass around red line copies, so you can see obviously where the changes. I don't know if the board likes to see that.
I love the red lines. Some council don't do it, and I don't know why. The red line is an excellent way of doing it, where you can say attaches the red line, but you should summarize a little bit about what it is that you're changing. So
Sure.
we know what we're looking for, and then provide a red line and a clean of your statement of facts. That would be excellent. I'd appreciate that. And then for kind of future notice for the architect, though, you're not actually having to make a lot of changes. We recently had an excellent submission where there's a sheet of changes that say on drawing A101, bubble number 6 is a change of unit count or something like that. And then you can go directly to A101, bubble number 6, and there it is, a change of unit count. Takes 2 minutes for us to review the drawings instead of an hour. So that would be amazing if you did that too, though you don't really have a lot of changes on your drawing. Okay?
Great.
All right, great. Any other last minute comments, questions? No, okay, and I don't see anybody with hand raised. Anybody who's in Zoom, you raise your hand through the Zoom feature, and I don't see actually any phone callers. Okay, all right then, so we can move on to the next one. Thank you very much.
Motion to close? Motion to close?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry. Motion to close. I thought we did that already. Yeah.
Motion to close, Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Aye.
Commissioner Sheta?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta?
Aye.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yeah.
It's Carlo. Just how much time is needed for the submission so that we can schedule accordingly?
I thought we, oh, right. I thought we asked that, but we didn't get an answer. Okay,
Yeah,
thank you for finding.
I think a couple of weeks would be adequate here. We don't have a lot of changes to make unless if my architects tell me something different, or our project manager has something different. But I think we can,
Okay.
relatively insignificant revisions to be made here. So I think a couple of weeks would do.
We'll be ready tomorrow.
You'll be ready tomorrow, and you're the client, so right?
We're the architects, yes.
You're the architect, so even better if you're ready tomorrow. That's excellent news. All right. I'm not sure how much ready tomorrow I can accommodate, but we'll try to put you on the next hearing or the one right after, okay? So, all right, thank you very much. I really appreciate you bringing your whole team. That makes it so much easier for us to get the questions answered.
Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
It's 12
Thank you
o'clock.
very
I'd like
much.
to take thank you. It's 12 o'clock. I'd like to take a 10-minute break before we go on to the next one. Is that all right?
Well, the next one is just a close. It's just, we're waiting for DOT. We got it.
Oh, all
right? I don't know if anybody has any questions, right?
No, but no, but the next one, and then we have a one after that. So let's do a 10-minute break, and then we can not break
Aye.
over. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. We'll be back at 12:10 or 12:12, really.
Okay, sorry.
Hi. Hello?
No, at least we're taking a break. Sorry.
Okay, it doesn't let me back in, by the way, with the webinar. Just letting you know.
Oh, okay. Steve, I'll email Steve again.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Bye.
seems a day for Zoom.
I don't understand what's going on technically.
I don't know. At least, did you see my email? You saw my email from Steve, right?
The technical adjustment somehow?
No, he gave her another invite. He told her to use the first invite to come back in. She must have got it.
Mhm. Okay, we have all the commissioners. We can continue.
Kurt? Steve, somebody. Okay. Okay, we're resuming the public hearing for October 6, 2020, 10 a.m. session. The next item to be discussed is 2019-82A, 430 St. Mark's Place, Staten Island. It is continued hearing. Elise, unmute.
Hi, I'm just going to stay on this.
Okay.
There's also a Seth Goodwin. Is he part of your team?
No, I don't think anyone from my team will be on.
No, I think he's from the other one.
Okay.
I guess Elise Fullader from Eric Kalanick PC. I don't really have much to say. It looks like you got all of the various approvals we were waiting on.
Yes, okay, thank you. Yeah, so we have all the sign-offs and we did get the DOT sign-off. So I just asked whether there's any members of the public who would like to speak on this. Anybody who might be interested who's already in Zoom, raise your Zoom hand.
Yes. Press 9 or the Zoom.
No, Tony.
Oh, sorry.
If you're in the Zoom hearing already, there's a little Zoom feature to raise your hand. And if you called in, which nobody did, then in order to raise a hand on Zoom only by a phone call, then you press *9 to raise your hand.
*9.
Okay. Mr. Goodwin, are you calling about this application? This is 430 St. Mark's Place?
He's registered for the next one.
No, I'm with the next one.
Okay, so you should actually not even be in the room, but okay, thank you. Okay, so then I would like to make a motion to close. I don't think there are any submissions, right?
No.
Yeah, okay. So I'd like to make a motion to close then.
Chair Perlmutter?
Aye.
Vice Chair Chanda?
Aye.
Commissioner Otley Brown?
Can you say that again? Sorry, we didn't hear you.
Aye.
Thank you. Commissioner Sheta?
Aye.
Commissioner Shabeta?
Aye.
Okay. Alrighty, that's done. The next
Thank
item.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Elise.
Sorry. The next item is 2019-182A, 1 Marina Road, Queens.
Hi, this is Dominic DeSantis from McLaren Engineering. We're the applicant. I think, thank you for all the additional comments. I think
Wait, sorry, before you go on, is there anyone else in your team who's going to be present?
yes, Arit Akborg from Parks Department, Nate Grove, Seth Goodwin, Eric Linsalata. I think there are a couple other park staff that maybe could announce themselves.
We see Mr. Goodwin, Eric Linsalata. We're allowed to talk now. Can anyone else from
Is Terrence McCormick with your team?
Yes.
Okay. There's a bunch of other names here. We have Nate Grove. Is he in your team?
Yes.
Aret Akborg.
He's the Parks Project Manager.
Okay. Christopher, I can't read the rest of the name.
Yeah, Christopher works with Nate Grove in the Marina Group at Parks.
What's his last name? Because it's cut off on my screen.
Amhi?
A-M-E-I?
No,
A-M-E-I-G-H.
sorry.
G-H. Okay, great, thanks. We also have Susan Rosenstadt. Your team?
No.
No?
Yes, Susan is our deputy for architecture and engineering.
And then Vesna Hadjibabich, maybe?
Yep, you got it. And she's our assistant commissioner for architecture and engineering.
Okay, great. All right, then. You want to proceed?
Can I, Dominic and engineering, if you don't mind, this is Nate Grove, Chief of Citywide Marina Operations for Parks. I just want to, I am in the field, so in case I'm not able to participate, unfortunately, on the last hearing, I wasn't able to. So if I may, thank you, Madam Chair, all the commissioners. I appreciate the complexity of this project. I think it's a good exercise for all of us to figure out how to approach a project like this on parkland. I'm not going to speak on a technical level. I'll try and be brief again because I'm at a marina now in Manhattan. But I just I wanted to, unfortunately, I wish I'd been able to participate in the last call because I feel like some of the items raised, and you mentioned some of them again here, so I'll touch upon them quickly. You can slow me down if you like. But first of all, I want to thank you, Chair Perlmutter, for connecting with Commissioner Silver. I got the debrief from Mitchell yesterday. I'm happy to hear that people are so focused on this asset of ours on an equity level, which I'm kind of uniquely positioned to speak to. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. Let me just quickly go to functionality when we talk about. I just want to underscore, for someone who's been at this site now nearly 2 decades after having kicked out a previous operator, terminating a concessionaire in 1999 who failed after an audit, we took over operation. Again, I've been there since about 2 years after that date, and we've really brought this asset to the public, predominantly Pier 1 and what we're talking about here. I'll just quickly speak to functionality. I really want to drive home this point that we've done all we can to figure out how this works on an operability, on a functionality from a, you talked about, I appreciate the water dependent use lens that's important to approach this from, but on a pure, again, I've watched concessionaires try and operate this fuel dock, snack shop, boat supply operation, and it only works with one person. So at the risk of beating that into the ground, elevating that thing, having the person have to go run up and down to the floating docks to pump boats, it just doesn't work. They've tried with 2 people in the past. The volume is just not there to be able to make this a 2-person operation. Otherwise, we would have been looking at doing this upland. Even though we'd still have to elevate upland, it would have been easier than over the water. We wouldn't trigger all those DEC concerns about additional overwater coverage. Our burden is the city's burden in terms of trying to replace what was there, and that's all we're trying to do here. We're trying to replace what was there. We're not trying to expand. We're not trying to augment. We're just trying to build it back, build it better, make sure that it will withstand whatever the future brings. This structure actually surprisingly did fine during Hurricane Sandy. I was there throughout the event. Of course, we have to build, with worse events in mind. But again, that functionality is key, and that's why we're here. Ramps, won't work. Again, the person has to be able to move up and down. You could slow me down on that. One of the questions that came up about how do people access boats? Yeah, these are predominantly floating structures. The fixed pier leads down to floating structures, and the boaters, can modify their own berths, their own slips as they like. But our job is to make it ADA. So I hear your conflict between federal. We've been looking at that since Hurricane Sandy. I completed one of the first Hurricane Sandy projects, which was Pier A at Boat Base, and actually where I am right now. And we were able to accomplish that with FEMA. So rest assured, that our approach to ADA components and requirements does square with FEMA. We're able to accomplish that. I'll let the McLarens and the experts in the room get further into that if they like, but on a functionality level, we do accomplish that. And we exceed it. This is the Parks Department after all. You know, we're not trying to cut corners here. Let me, yeah.
Can I just ask a question? So, you know, because we've read in the papers about the need for one person to operate all of those things in the concession. My question was, there are two toilet rooms essentially in the space that have a total of, I don't remember, 6 fixtures, 6 toilets, something like that. And my question is, why can't only one of them be a handicapped accessible toilet room, so a 1-room toilet room, and then the other rooms be elevated so that you're meeting the ADA requirements of having accessibility for 1 unit, which is typical, and then the others are located above the design flood, and that way sort of 2 birds. And then there's also a lot of equipment that's being, the way I'm understanding it, shown sitting on the dock itself, as opposed to elevated up the 5 to 7 feet, whatever. I don't understand what that has to do with the concessionaire. It's a room that's set aside as an equipment room. So what I'm looking at is, why can't some of these things be on a higher elevation? And to the extent that the concessionaire needs some of that at the same level as he or she is working, you provide that at the lower level. I mean, as opposed to kind of all or nothing.
Sure, okay. and I'll let engineering speak to that. But unfortunately, I can't help but ask the question: wouldn't we need a waiver to build what you're proposing? I don't. Maybe I'm missing the nuance. Why?
So you still
we're
need
here
a waiver
because, yeah.
So here's the thing. We're supposed to be looking at, one of our findings is, it's sort of not an all or nothing at all, right? We're supposed to be reducing the degree to which damage might occur in the event of a strong wave action. And when you hear Commissioner Sheta, who's a very experienced engineer, going through all of those details, you're hearing him concerned about the damage to the structure. And we're both concerned about the damage to the structure and the costs associated with replacing everything that could have been avoided had the structure been designed differently. So he's looking at the structural design. I'm looking at the architectural design. Why couldn't it be designed differently so that the impact is less? So the fewer things you have located below the design flood elevation, the fewer things will be put at risk and will have to be rebuilt or reinstalled, okay, or whatever it is. That's what
more money, and the more money you're going to save as well.
We're not. Yes. We wouldn't save. I mean, we wouldn't save money by building a 2-story structure over 1 story. Anyway, I'll let the engineers. We're going to build this to withstand. It's already plus 10. It needs to be plus 17. So we're already above the whatever. I don't have my technical terms.
No,
and again, I watched it during Sandy. You know, get that impact, and the pier height helped us. Unlike the floating docks at Pier 3, which got far more damage than this. This is already plus 10 above the, but we're supposed to be plus 17, I understand. So is what it is. Code tells us what we need to do, and we can't really argue that. I can tell you from watching it withstood that. And we're going to build it to withstand that. But I'll let and it will be more costly to figure out how to get the public up to a second level. It just will. The building,
there isn't sorry, figuring out how to get to the public to the second level is a staircase. It's not a ramp anymore, right? It's a simple staircase. If you split the functions into things that must be at pier level versus the things that don't need to be at pier level. So I'm afraid that that's not a substantiated statement, with sort of all due respect. I appreciate what Parks goes through. I appreciate all of the really great things that Parks does, but we're charged with a very difficult, very technical analysis in order to grant these waivers, which we do rarely, because there is so much risk associated with building below wave levels, wave action levels. Okay, so go
Understood.
ahead.
Thank you, Chair. And to be honest, yeah, at the risk of prolonging it, I'm interested to see what examples, and I mean that sincerely. I can tell you throughout our portfolio, you asked if there are equivalents where we've, what have we done? The answer is we haven't. Again, I've been at this. I've traveled every pier. I've looked at all of our assets, and this is, anyway, this is why I think we're where we are. We don't have a proxy to work from. Be that as it may, again, maybe that is part of the conversation here on a technical level. You mentioned the good things that we do, so I'll take that segue. And really, it was a little vexing to hear concerns about equity here. I will tell you, this is the most equitable asset over the water in the entire city of New York. I am qualified to make that statement. I'm not one to over dramatize. This pier provides the greatest amount of public use of any pier in the entire city, full stop, to boaters and non-boaters alike. Seth Goodwin, my deputy, who's on the phone, and I have invested, again, between us, 35 years in making sure this pier serves the diverse range of users. So I will just quickly tick those off. I want to be very clear on this. This pier is open year round. We only have to secure it during maritime security MARSEC level, which Seth can speak to because he's on all those task forces. That's because we have some commercial charter vessels, which are publicly available charters that take people out for fishing and for special events. So that's why we have those MARSEC requirements at this pier. I think you may have referred to that, and what do we do with other piers? This is the only pier in our portfolio that has that requirement, save Sheepshead Bay, but those are fixed concrete piers. Those aren't, we're not doing anything there. So aside from during MARSEC events and yes.
What's a MARSEC event?
Seth, if you could quickly.
Seth, you go ahead. We can't hear you, Seth. Mr. Goodwin, you have to unmute yourself
if you're going to speak.
Yeah, sorry, I was having some technical problem. MARSEC refers to Maritime Security Act. It's a post September 11th, 2002 maritime security requirement, which because of some of the types of boats that are at the marina, we're obligated to meet some requirements with the Coast Guard.
But like what? We're talking about hazards that have to do with some dignitary or something like that? What are we talking about? Are we talking about flood conditions?
It can, the Coast Guard, if they decide to elevate the MARSEC level, it could be, it could be something like a terrorist threat. It could also be an environmental situation, or it could be an event, weather event like Hurricane Sandy. They might seek to elevate the MARSEC level, and which we would have to take certain steps, possibly locking down the marina, the Coast Guard possibly taking the step of restricting certain types of traffic on the water or locking down certain areas of the harbor. That's what that refers to.
Okay, so when I talked about this special treatment of this pier only, I was reading some kind of emergency procedures that only this
Correct.
pier has to go through. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes.
Well,
Yes,
yes.
it is. Yes, Chair, it is. We don't have that at any of our other recreational marinas.
And the reason
yeah.
you have to do it here is because of the nature of the boats that are docked here?
Correct. Correct. Because of
So
the
no
type.
place. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, it's the type. It triggers. It's K-type, Seth, or T-type, K-type. It's the size. It's the functionality of the vessel. It's that it's taking passengers. on an event basis. It's the passenger count. It's 150 plus that these vessels can carry, and they do so for public events, that sort of thing. So it falls under this. Just to be clear, for the layman, this was the same as, you'll remember after September 11th, those color codes for Homeland Security from green, yellow, orange, red. This is similar, where you go from MARSEC level 1, 2, 3, and we have signs that we put up specific to that MARSEC level. Right now we're at MARSEC level 1, which is there's no imminent threat. So it's basically a standardized national response to security threats that might be approaching us from the water.
Okay, but so you're saying it's the only pier in the cities, in the city or in the Parks Department's roster?
In our roster.
So does that mean that the Circle Line, for instance, leaves from a pier
Yes.
that's not in Parks? Oh,
Correct.
So Circle Line would also be MARSAC 1 or a MARSAC high alert, but it's just not in the Parks Department's purview.
Correct. Yeah,
Okay.
I think the popular thought when people hear, without getting too much along every mile of our waterfronts, but people picture these types of operations south of Riverside Park, where I am right now, along the Hudson River Park. Those are not our assets. South of 59th Street, we do not operate those. So Circle Line, some of those big charter boats. I think you'd mentioned stairs going up to vessels. We don't have any stairs going up to vessels. All of our gangways lead down to vessels. So we don't have any of those cruise terminals. Hudson River Park Economic Development Corporation has those. Parks is in the business of publicly available recreational vessels only.
I see. Okay. Thank you. Very helpful.
Yeah, I appreciate the questions. I do like talking about this business, but it'd be better, even better if we could restore this. Again, we closed this asset over 4 years ago, April 2016. So here we are, 4 years plus. Effort by a lot of partners here, but here we are. This pier right now, the users that are being denied this, I just want to really be clear. The public usage of this pier for bathroom amenity, for picnic tables, for fishing. This is the most popular fishing spot on all of Northeast Queens. All the local is ethnic mix that ends up on this pier to use it for fishing. We put out picnic tables just to serve those people. Our dock masters host fishing clinics with the urban park rangers. We do free community programming, marine education. We host historic tall ships that dock there pro bono on condition that they provide public sales and marine education. This is the joy of this job, is opening up this watery sixth borough to those people who don't ever get to take advantage of the water. It never gets tired. I never get tired of saying that. 2 decades on, this is what we do there. This is ground zero for that sort of activity. The dragon boating has expanded 4-fold under my watch. When I got there were 3 teams. There are now 12 team canoes that get together at least twice a week. They're very open. They're very inclusive. Empire Dragon Boats, all cancer survivor female team that practices out of there. They're all asking Seth and I on a daily basis, when is this going to be restored? The American Small Craft Association, which is a community sailing group that's been around for decades, we give them free dockage there because we can do it, provided they're serving the public. We don't need to monetize every inch. We also, however, return revenue to the city, to the general fund, to pay for police officers and nurses. I've increased the revenue during my tenure here. I mean, on so many levels, again, I feel like, again, remiss that I wasn't able to communicate that. I wasn't able to participate in the past. I'm sure Commissioner Silver relayed some of this to you. What you're going to hear from the community is, yes, the promenade. We hear you. Frank, who spoke at the last hearing, I understand. We hear from him. We hear him loud and clear from the Ditmars Block Association. This project is not a promenade project. This is to rebuild the marina. We have the funding. A lot of that is FEMA funding, which I'm getting more and more anxious about. To answer your question, the capital funding is there. I spoke with OMB last week, our task force there. The funding is there. The FEMA funding is still there. I want to leverage those dollars. That's why I pitched this project to City Hall many moons ago. We want to move this forward. The promenade has other projects that will address that. We're working very closely with the Port Authority. You mentioned the $16.5 million project investing in that promenade. That was part of the negotiation terms that we struck with the Port Authority to make sure it's conditional that that work is part of the AirTrain project. Also, capital, I don't want to speak for you folks. I know there's a Candela project that's another $3,000 to improve those historic structures there. Also involves a little bit of promenade work. So we hear the community on okay, thank you. We hear the community on that. I agree. I think the promenade needs a facelift. It's been since the late 90s since it got that big investment through DEP, through their septic. It was a negotiation with DEP. Anyway, that's history. That will be met through other means. That's the main, I think, equity piece you're going to hear about is, well, what about the promenade? I go there every day. I go there every day. I've been working throughout this pandemic. I live in Central Queens. I take advantage of the promenade every day as well. So great project. I look forward to continuing to work through this process. And we do need to move forward. I don't know which winter we're talking about either, but we have to figure out the path forward on this. I mean, again, the waiver is necessary. The variance is necessary for us to get back to our friends at SBS, to DOB, say, okay, look, this is where we are with this. We are going to start procurement of this process. Procurement's going to take another year. We need to finalize these drawings. We need to move forward.
Mr. Grove, first of all, it's good to hear from you. I worked with you many moons ago, so it's good to hear you.
Thank you.
I know your commitment to this project. My question, you mentioned the FEMA funding. It would be helpful if in your documents, if you can clarify that and the level of requirements and other things that you would have to meet. And you kind of expressed concern that you're afraid that the FEMA fund may go away if you don't act it out in a certain time frame. So I do hear your concern. And if you could just elaborate those in your documents, that would be very helpful for the board also. And
Okay.
if there are any other criteria requirements that ties you to the FEMA funds, that also would be very helpful. Thanks.
Sure.
And then my question is, because you mentioned a Candela project, what's that?
Capital.
Those are the shade structures. They're called Candela, named after an architect who designed similar structures. They're dating back from the '64 World's Fair. They have a really unique arches. If you drive by, you'll definitely recognize them. They're all fiberglass. They've not weathered well over the years, and there's a project to restore them. They get named the Candela structures, but they're the shade structures basically in the middle of the promenade, and that's a project that's beginning design as soon as I think it's.
These are those hyperbolic. These are those hyperbolic ones, right? Okay.
Yeah, they're really unique, and so a lot of people really like them. There's a lot of historic preservation aspect to them. But again, outside of our project, but just one of the other projects going on in the area that we like to point to as a reason why the Marina project doesn't need to take on that work.
Okay, so I think because I know we had a lot of testimony, as you know, at the last hearing that brought up this subject of environmental justice. And I believe there's at least one caller kind of in the waiting room who is wanting to hear the answers to these questions. To the extent that you could very clearly during this presentation articulate the monies that are coming from other sources that would focus on the areas of their concern, which was the promenade and other areas about Pier 3 and not Pier 1, because that's the subject here, but Pier 3. There were a lot of comments about what bad shape they're in. So to the extent that you can explain monies, timing, anything that you might know about for that would be very helpful from the environmental justice point of view.
Sure, and I could take this. First off, let me state that the work to restore Pier 3 is part of this project. It wasn't featured heavily in the documents we submitted previously because we didn't need a variance for it. It's all pretty straightforward. We're reconstructing basically what was there and doing repairs to the floating docks. And that's to address the damage from Hurricane Sandy and to bring it up to a state of good repair in general and to improve its overall resiliency. Again, it's all within the existing code. We don't need a variance for any of that. We also presented that to the community board, and they asked for some more information on it, which we will be providing. The the marina itself, we have about $36.5 million of city funding called mayoral funding, and about, I believe, $8.2 dollars from FEMA, which is from the Hurricane Sandy program, which the city lays out and FEMA reimburses upon completion. So there's a lot of checks and balances we go through during design and then through construction, and then the final rectification of costs for the city to recoup that money. And the Office of Management and Budget watches it very closely, makes sure that we're providing meeting all the requirements of those grants, and we can definitely provide more information on that as requested. So a total of about $44 million for this marina project. That's all told for design,
That's
construction, contingency.
Pier 1 and 3?
Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. In addition, there's the very big LaGuardia Air Train project that it was in the news a lot. The Port Authority is undertaking it to bring a connection from the LIRR and the 7 train out to LaGuardia Airport. There's a lot of contentious elements of which the Parks Department's not really involved. One of the issues that directly affects Parks is that part of the path they're taking is through our property, which is going to be basically through this parking lot and the footprint of the existing marina boatyard near the promenade, and then down into the park where the 7 train and the LIRR are near Roosevelt Ave. As part of the agreement the city reached with the Port Authority must complete certain projects that have extra public benefit. And I believe, and I don't know all the details of this because I only know how it affects our project, that one of those was a dedication of $16 million for promenade improvements. And those are, as far as I understand it, going to be administered by Port Authority, but since it's all on parkland, it's going to be coming through the Parks Department for review. And of course, we always like to prioritize the opinions, the desires, the needs of the community, as well as those of the infrastructure. So, we imagine that the majority of that funding, pretty much all of it's probably going to be going towards restoring that promenade, which is the kinds of things that people have been asking for. We hadn't talked about it too much in our presentations to the community, in our paperwork, for 2 reasons. One, it was another agency's project, so we don't usually like to step on other people's toes. We want them to make their presentations. And the other was that we didn't realize how much, how concerned people were when thinking about the marina to also be thinking about the promenade. So that was maybe an oversight on our part. We probably should have brought it up, but it seemed like it was a much bigger scope of discussion than we needed to have.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so you have anything else you want to add? I would like someone to address our concerns about the design of the structure.
Yeah, so somewhat echoing what Nate said, we've been working on this for about 4 years now. Even earlier, if you count the pre-planning stages and how we've been watching the deterioration of the existing pier and thinking of ways to keep it upright and afloat, so to speak. The design that we've presented here is the result of many, many iterations in which, as Nate loves talking about the operations, like I love talking about the design. I'm the Deputy Director of Engineering. This is what I do. And we've gone through that balance between the FEMA requirements, between the DEC and Army Corps, between the needs of the boaters, the needs of other constituents, including the public at large, which are often not always spoken for in what they need, because it's sometimes a matter of who shows up to the community board meetings. The Parks Department likes to be very focused on trying to include as many people as possible, not only in who we're listening to, but who we're considering. And one of the reasons that we want to keep it all on one level is that the principles of universal accessibility. So if we don't like to make split facilities. We don't want one person to have to use a secondary door when everyone else is going to another door. So, you know, on the one hand, that simplifies things, but it's also, we think, it's a better way to design and build. So we try to do that as much as possible. If we don't have to, if we can make an at-grade connection instead of making a ramp, we would do that. If we don't have to put in stairs and can instead do it with a grade change with a ramp, we would prefer to do that. So that's the kind of thing we focus on. With respect to minimizing damage with this design approach, we basically took it as you can minimize damage by elevating everything. Absolutely. Well, first off, of course, we could move it all upland. We for many reasons, decided that was not feasible within this project. We weren't going to be able to accomplish those objectives of a marina, which, you know, reasonably has to have certain facilities on the water. The other thing we could do would be to raise it, and you know, as discussed, there's complications, how to put in those ramps. Also now, you know, everyone, that ramp space would take up space on the deck that we want to free up for other uses. So it's not just for transit to the building and back, but it's also for fishing, for congregating, for staring at the sunset. And we want to be able to have room for that. And the third thing that we considered was, what if we just harden that structure? If we do everything we can on the design, on the detailing, and the materials, such that the storm does not damage it, or we take every precaution such that a reasonable storm, let's say the 100-year recurrence, is not going to damage that structure. So you talked about the cladding. There's no way I'm going to approve the final design for this that has cladding that could become knocked loose by wind, waves, or debris. That's going to be anchored as securely as material science can make it. That's a part of our design. Commissioner Shedd had mentioned wave forces. We've had McLaren's coastal engineers model the wave forces in that basin, considering the storms, considering the extreme weather events, and we're very confident in their approach. We're very confident that the forces we're applying are going to be withstood by the designs that we're developing to meet them. So not only the overall structural stability, but the components and cladding.
I'd like
And
McLaren to explain that.
Wait a
please.
second.
And of course, we can
Mr.
absolutely.
Just a second. Before you go on with this, the frustration that I'm having, and I know Commissioner Shedd is having, is what you're doing is you're giving us assurances, like I said before, that everything will be fine. But Commissioner Shedd is an engineer, hence a scientist with respect to engineering concerns, right? I'm an architect with experience on failed materials and the effect on heavy storm impacts, right? So your assurance is that I would never spec cladding that'll fall off is amusing at best, because in severe storms, cladding falls off. And I don't care what kind of anchoring systems you're using, right? So I'm not doing well with these assurances. Don't worry about it. So
And
what
so-
we actually need, let me just finish, what we need, and I don't expect you to answer it right here in front of us. What we actually need is your materials and methods experts to respond very, very specifically to the questions. And the questions that you responded to last time through that chart were very helpful, but then when the question got hard, the answer got skipped. So it's not good when the answer is skipped, because then I'm like, well, that was the only thing I wanted to really know the answer to, and you skipped it because it was a hard question, right? So this idea of the all or nothing at all. So on the one hand, Commissioner Shedd has his comments about structural design that must be addressed, and on the other, and you could address, for example, the increase in the pier coverage. And maybe that's not allowed. So maybe a ramp wouldn't work. But again, there's no drawing that says a ramp wouldn't work. And second, I'm not looking at the all or nothing at all. I'm looking at a toilet room at grade, equipment that's lifted up above the additional, I think it's another 5 or 7 feet above the level of the pier, and looking at the other toilet rooms lifted above grade, so that in terms of accessibility, you have an accessible toilet room, and then nothing else that doesn't need to be accessed. Equipment doesn't need to be accessed at grade. I'm not saying the concessionaires, candy supply has to be up on the second floor. I'm suggesting that what can be elevated should be, and we're not seeing that as a solution. So I really don't like the idea that you're refusing to listen to the requests by the technical experts who are looking at this application. And this is a really difficult application for us. We're charged with something very complicated. So please don't just say, don't worry about it, it'll be taken care of, right?
And
so,
I hear what you're saying. I absolutely appreciate it. I wish you didn't take it as refusal. We will very clearly illustrate the answers to all your concerns point by point in writing and with reference to drawings. That was
with actual drawings, not just reference to drawings, actual new
reference to them,
that
yes.
show us. And in terms of the earlier question by Mr. Grove about, would love to see examples. I just went on Pinterest and I just put in 2-story structures on piers, and up came these gorgeous little structures with winding staircases and all of this stuff. And they're not major events in architecture. They're ones where the lower level is like the snack bar, and the upper level is, the little watchtower or something up there, which, by the way, they put the equipment on. So in the event of a storm event, it doesn't disappear.
Mm-hmm.
And the same for showing drawings that show how are you going to prevent the equipment from falling off the roof. Nothing is shown strapped or bolted or anything, right? We can't work with a promise that we'll do it. We have to see details. Commissioner Sheta, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to mention that when it comes to designing a 2-story building or even a 3-story building on a waterfront, this is not the mission impossible. I have done this in a project like 3 and something years ago. It's called Canal Dock. It's in Connecticut. It's a pier, probably the footprint of which is much more than what we're looking at right now. I'm glad that you mentioned Roosevelt Island, the Four Freedoms Park, the seawall at the very southern point of that. I did the structural design for that seawall, and we considered a wave that's much higher than what is considered right now. My issue with this application is the following. Every time I have a concern, the feedback is, trust us, we did it right. Probably you're gonna be surprised with this. I do not trust myself even when it comes to structural design. When I do a structural design, I review it like 3 times. Designing a structure like this, it's not a joke. So when I look at numbers and I look at methodologies and I look at the approach and I raise concerns, and the feedback next time comes without even the calculations. The first submission has been made with design calculations for everything. The current submission, as far as I understand, is a value engineering from the previous submission. Am I correct?
Yes, this is not our original design.
Yes, this is a value engineer design.
Which we did
Why
about a
the
year ago.
calculations were not submitted? Why, when it came to one of the most critical structural issues I ever met during my career, most of structural engineers get mistakes when looking at this because it needs somebody who knows geotech and structural. It needs somebody who's geostructural.
Mm-hmm.
The pile fixed the depth. When I spoke about this last hearing, the response came this hearing, oh, we looked at it, we ran the numbers, we did the calculations, and it is okay. Where are the calculations? I haven't seen them. They should have been submitted. The entire calculation package for this structure should be submitted. The wave height issue that I spoke about, that feedback this time came, oh, we looked at historical data. As far as I understand, this structure is being designed to withstand 100-year storm. Am I correct?
Yes, and I understand your point completely. that we did not provide sufficient detail for you to be able to be comfortable with your review.
Not
I
just
think-
this,
I think-
not just this, the
Mhm,
data
for
that
everything.
you consider,
Understood.
the historical data that you consider, did they include 100-year event?
Yes.
Yeah.
They did? So I want to see that, please.
Okay.
Plus a provision for sea level rise, Dominic.
I want to know, I need an answer to this. Would the ASCE, your design load code, does it allow you to just throw away its procedure and go to the historical data? Meaning, if the AC tells you to get the wave height through the procedure that's in the ASCE, 1, 2, 3, 4 steps, would it allow you to just forget about the wave height that you get from this procedure and revert to the historical data? If yes, I want to, please, I need clarifications to that.
Yeah. I mean, I have it open on my computer. I mean, I don't know if you want to.
Mr. DeSantis speaking, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that specific question, if you look in ACE 7-10, section 5.4.4, where it discusses development of wave loads on vertical walls, it allows you to either use a procedure outlined in that code or do a more advanced numerical modeling procedure, which we did both. And based on those two analyses, we thought it was appropriate to conform with the code and the New York City Building Code to use the analysis from ASE 7-10 while considering that if you use the mudline depth of -16 in the equation that you went through earlier, you would have a 22-foot wave, which is not feasible in that bay. So we compared this analysis using our assumptions for the water depth versus our own independent coastal analysis, and we used a conservative value, and what was submitted in the original calculation package.
All right. So if you could clarify that, I see your hand, Commissioner Chandra. If you could clarify that in your submission so that Commissioner Sheta can see what section of the code allows you to do that and how you did your analysis, that would clear it up. I think the problem with the application is you're making assumptions that just because you say so, we're going to accept it. We need to see it. We're looking at this very scientifically because that's our charge. So it's kind of one scientist to another. Please show your science reports, and then the science reviewer will review your science reports. Really, that's what we're talking about. The things would go much faster if you gave us exactly what we're asking for. But again, I do want to underscore that unless I see an infeasible split level project, I'm not going to believe that you can't do this as a split level project. And so I don't want to see words proving it. I want to see a drawing and a good reason for why it's not going to work out that way. Okay.
So just to clarify, because I think the problems that we're having here that has frustrated you is that we didn't fully understand what exactly you were looking for in the submittal and then in the resubmittal. So just so I can clarify, you'd like to see, of course, all the calculations, very accurate, complete drawing set, specific sketches and or cut sheets and or other technical information to satisfy your questions. And in the case of design alternatives, some kind of clear depiction, probably sketches, justifying why certain design alternatives were not pursued.
Yeah.
No, the opposite. It goes like this.
Okay.
This is one of my mantras when I do the work on these hearings. I'm your client. And I, the client, say, this is what I actually want. I want a ground floor toilet room that meets handicap requirements, that can also easily be used by the vendor who has to stay downstairs, who can just slip into the toilet, put a little back in 5 minutes sign and come right back. And he doesn't leave grade, right? But all of the other toilet rooms are on the second floor. The drawing, and I'm saying I'm your client, and I want no equipment located below design flood. because I don't want to have to pay for new equipment in the event of a flood event. In an event of a wave event, it's not just a flood event, right? And any of the other things that could feasibly be up that don't need access by the general public, I need that located above the flood levels, right?
Understood.
That's what I'm telling you as your client. So I want to see a drawing that you're doing for me, the client, that does that.
Okay. And I
Okay.
think we need to do a better job of depicting it, because that, besides the restroom, that was the design intent for all the equipment that needs to be elevated, that all the equipment to be elevated besides what can't be elevated, such as the sewage ejection pumps that have to be lower. But
For instance.
I think we need to do a better job of illustrating that for you.
Okay, and so for the equipment, wherever it's located, because if your structure has structure below design flood, that could be something that gets sort of causes a toppling because of very extreme wave action, then all of the equipment, wherever it's located, has to be strapped, bolted, whatever in place. You need to show clearly on your drawings that they're strapped, bolted, how, and what's the technical, let's say, reinforcement for that strapping, like, you know, tying it down with a belt isn't going to be enough, right? Tying it with a bow isn't going to be enough. It has to be something that has been proven in the discipline to hold equipment in place in the event of an extreme seismic action effectively, right? That's what a wave action is. It's like the earth moving, right?
Okay, so drawings, specs, calculations, absolutely.
Yes. And so, you know, you gave us that gigantic spec book and said, turn to section 9700. That's not really what we mean, right? Tell us what it is, tell us the specifics of this thing, what product you're using, and the magic panels that are not going to be allowed to be specified unless they don't fall off. Well, I'd love to see what those are, because there are a lot of people in the city who should be using those amazing panels. Okay. Commissioner, so I see Vice Chair Shonda had her hand up, and Mr. DeSantis, did you still have more you wanted to add?
Yeah, I think maybe I would just like to ask if there's a better way to represent the information, because I understand it's a rather large drawing set, but I think a lot of this information is in the drawings, and maybe it's not as easy to locate because we're more familiar with the set.
Okay, no, so let's put it this way. After I realized the reduced set had reduced it too much, I went through every page in your 102 pages.
I did the same, yeah.
And Commissioner Shetta did the same, and he's looking at boards, and I'm looking at the drawings for the structures, because that's what I'm being charged to look at, right? Every time I saw a drawing of the structure, I looked at it. I looked at the cross-referencing. So for instance, it said there was an elevation, then I go in, or a section, I go and I look for the section. It's not there. It's not in any set, right? So the coordination, the set isn't coordinated. So better not to send that out to bid yet, because the contractor won't know what to do. And so you need to go back and look through the set. But when I looked at the equipment, the mechanical drawings, I didn't see the mechanical drawings showing the tie downs. I saw the specification of some kind of a pump or an HVAC piece of equipment, whatever. But I didn't see how it's going to be secured to the roof. I didn't see that it was elevated and like hanging from the ceiling of the roof within that equipment room. I didn't see any of that. So you need to go back and look at the drawings. And, you know, this is what I always tell architects, because architects aren't so good at telling stories. You are telling a story. You're telling a story to us. And everything that you say needs to be backed up with a drawing. So if you say it's secured, where's the drawing that shows it's secured? Drawing M102 shows it's secured with, you know, a belt and angle irons or whatever, right? That are shown by this section of the AXME or something to withstand pressures or seismic pressures of XYZ, right? You need to do that. You're going to have to do that in real life. You have to do that for us. Okay. Okay. Any other questions before I go to Commissioner Shonda? No? Okay. Vice Chair Shanda? You're muted. You're muted, you're muted.
Muted,
Okay, a
muted,
couple
muted.
of questions were brought up by Mr. Commissioner Sheta, and I would like the parks to clarify that because that's how I understand it, and I would like them to affirm it. When we are talking about a project being done in certain part of the river of the body, some kind of a river, it doesn't mean that's the same kind of behavior pattern of the water we're going to see on the subject site. So from the documents that you've provided, the Flushing Bay has a very different wave action and other things compared to any other marine projects that may have happened in any other part of the city. So if you can just affirm that in your statement, again, that would be helpful. And you're using basically the local information that is absolutely needed for that, and the design of it is particularly referring to only to that wave action that is there, and not somewhere in Staten Island, and not in the Bronx, and not in Connecticut or East River or anywhere. The other part is I am very cognizant of it as a former city employee, as a former HPD. We used to value engineer, but at the same time, we also did not want to make sure that the building fell down because there was a liability issue. And in this case, Parks is going to own the property. Parks is going to manage the property, and there's a huge liability concern. So even if there is value engineering, I'm assuming city is on the hook for anything that may happen. So I will be surprised if the value engineering is done in a way that will result in a crumbling of a structure or a crumbling of a building of any sort. As we all know, everybody loves to sue the city because you get a lot of money out of it. So I would like all of us to be very cognizant of that and make sure that this value engineering is not happening as it would happen in a private sector. It is happening in a government sector where we know we need to make sure that it is safe and sound for everybody to use, and nobody is damaged and nobody is affected or hurt in this process. Thank you.
And thank you. And that's actually one of the charges of our findings in order to grant this waiver, right? We must ensure that the structure is safe, and we must ensure that it doesn't cost the government money in the event of this extreme action. So you have to help us get there. And the more you focus on your set of drawings, so make a set of, take out from that 102-page set all of the things that have to do with this specific location. We don't need to see any kind of detail, say, about Pier 3, because that's not before us, right? So maybe you can reduce that set down to the relevant borings that relate to this location, that kind of thing, so that we're not traveling all over the set looking for the answer to our question. But also, I think you're going to have to add drawings to your set, or you're going to have to add information on the drawings to be able to respond to our questions about the safety of the material of the structure as currently proposed. But then that's not relieving you of the need to provide the 2-story split system structure that I'm describing. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could just say, if you want, about the value engineering, it was absolutely not a reduction. Don't take my word for it. Reduction in the materials or the design loads that you might typically associate with the words value engineering. Actually, what we did is we totally relocated the structure from where it was originally intended to be, and we had to, at that point, make it very long to get to deep water for the berths. And in this instance, we looked at another location that was nearby, and we decided to locate the pier there because we would actually have to build less pier. So with the value engineering, we made sure that we kept the design standards initially. We really just tried to reduce the size and to try to be a little bit creative about a few other elements that, again, did not detract from those overall design standards of resilience. And just on a personal note, as the Deputy Director of Engineering for the Parks Department, and one of the stewards of infrastructure that's often 80 years old and at the end of its life and crumbling, we pay a lot of attention to how long something is going to last, and that's really top of mind for us, because we'd rather not have to come back in a generation and reconstruct something.
Okay.
Because there won't be money for it in a generation. This one took 80 years, so.
Yeah, exactly. There you go. Good enough reason. So, Commissioner Shetta, I see your hand up. Please make it really fast. We're way up behind schedule and we have a 2 p.m. hearing. So only add something we haven't discussed and make a really quick statement about it because we also need to go to the public, okay?
I just want to say my understanding is they're going to submit a calculation package. If the points that we spoke about could be like taken away from that package and put in a separate like piece of paper so we can take a look at it. I don't need to look at the entire calculation package, just the issues that I raised, the pile fixity, the wave height, and if we're good with that, I believe we're gonna be good with everything else. Thank you.
Okay, and therefore, there is one person who's in the attendee list, last 3 digits 215, I believe. And I think this is the last. So we're allowing that person to speak. Person with last 3 digits 215, please state your name and what case you're calling about.
And please press *6 to unmute. Again, *6 will unmute your phone.
I'm asking the person to unmute. Person with last 3 digits 215, please press *6 and then state your name. Do we see anybody else here? Is there anyone in the Zoom call who would like to, oh, the person *6, sorry, 215, please press *6. Otherwise, is there anybody else in the Zoom hearing that would like to speak? If so, raise your Zoom hand or unmute yourself and speak up.
This case is 2019-182A, 1 Marina Road, Queens.
Okay, so for those who might be listening on the YouTube video, because we did have testimony at the last hearing, I want to make sure anyone listening on the YouTube video to the Marina Road case, it's please call 646-558-8656. And the pass number is 963-4245-3893, #. So while we wait to see if anyone is going to call in or that one person who's called in presses *6 so they can speak, I'd like to know whether, how much time you need to make your very clear, complete submission.
Dominic, what do you think? A month?
Yeah, I
Or
would say
try
4.
to- yeah.
Sorry, 4 weeks would be good.
I'm gonna
Okay.
harass you every other day, 2 or 3 weeks,
Yeah.
but
Please
hopefully
do.
4.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So definitely, I would really recommend, and I might give you an extra week on that. If you're getting it out, don't use 4 weeks and then nobody's reviewed it, because kind of one of the problems we had with the materials, though I really appreciated the chart that you did where you took every one of our statements and you went through it. There were notably some questions in the chart that weren't answered, and there were uncoordinated drawings and things like that. You need to go through your submission with a fine-tooth comb and make sure everything is coordinated so we don't get slowed down because either a question wasn't answered or the drawings don't match up, okay? So yeah, that's internal activity on your part. It'll be sort of too late for us to do anything about it once it's submitted, okay? All right, I don't see anybody calling in, so I think then thank you all, your whole team, for calling in. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. I will let you know when the next hearing is, but I'm basing it on your 5 weeks to submit. Okay?
Okay, this concludes the public hearing for October 6th, 10 a.m. session. We will resume at 2 p.m., Madam Chair.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, everyone. See you at 2.